So at this time, it is 7:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday, October 19th, 2020. And you guys just all disappeared. There you are. I'm Gary Upton, and I'd like to begin the meeting with a call to order. Pardon me. We are holding this meeting via video conference, aka Zoom. I'd like to identify all the members that are here this evening. As I did, Jen, you are now recording. Good job. Thank you, Jen. And we've got tonight seated, we've got Phyllis Berger, our secretary. We've got Kristen Chantrell, our vice chair, Theodore Koch, regular seated member, Rosemary Osfeld, regular seated member. Don Fiminster will be here after we go over, it sounds like, the new stuff if his computer works. But for now, he won't be seated. Dave Schmidt as a regular seated member, and myself, Gary Upton, the chairman, as a regular seated member. We will seat one alternate, I suppose. We only need one alternate, don't we?
Correct.
Is there a preference amongst you guys? I hate to be so democratic here, but Jason, Doreen, either one of you guys saying, "Oh, please pick me." Sounds like Jason's got some applicable things to say on the record, Doreen. If you're,
I would vote Doreen.
Okay. I would vote Doreen. Doreen would vote Jason.
Yeah, I vote Jason. No.
Oh, you guys.
No. It's fine.
Well,
it doesn't matter. I don't care.
All right, so we'll
Why don't you put me on since I have something applicable to say to the meeting or to the sidewalk?
It's up to you guys. What do you want to do?
Okay, Jason, you go.
It was amongst you two. I'd hate to vote for it. So Jason will be seated for now as the alternate, and we're going to move on. Obviously, we have Jennifer Lindo, our administrative assistant. She's in your top left, and she's always in your top left. Sue Spang. Where's Sue? I didn't see Sue. Oh, there you are, Sue. Hi, Sue. And Paul Daigle, our ex officio, is here this evening. Hi, Paul. How are you? Thanks for coming. And our town attorney, who I was previously speaking to, Mr. Zamarka, is just below Paul. Hi, Mark. And we have a variety of applicants and presenters. And of course,
Don Fiminster is here.
Oh, Mr. Fiminster. There he is. Don didn't attend the site walk, correct? Was I understanding that correctly?
I don't know.
He was not there.
Okay. So we'll go through the new business with the Jason being seated. And then we'll kick you to the curb, Jason, and bring Don in if that's okay with you. And of course, I have not announced the existence straight in the middle of our one and only Mr. Gary Gaishel, the town's agent. So I'd like to continue on, guys, with a little bit of a reminder. We're doing this thing via Zoom. The cleaner we can do a good job of, not talking over each other, making sure that we're acknowledged by the chair. If we have something to say, that's very helpful. And I'm always here to take critique. I appreciate the critique. But if we could really just try and stay in order and make sense when we're speaking, announce yourself, say who you are. The board will be unmuted. If you happen to speak as an applicant or any other capacity, and you know that you no longer want to speak and we haven't muted you, please just mute yourself. And during public delegations, all lines will be open for comment. So I just want to kind of read through the rest of these rules. As required by executive order, everyone must state their name and where they are from prior to speaking. John Smith, board member. Harry White, 123 Main Street, each time they speak. During public delegations, all lines will be open for comment. Please wait to be called on by the chairman to speak. Once you have finished speaking, please mute your microphone and phone. During each agenda item, only the board, staff, and presenters will be unmuted to speak on that particular item. We like what we do, but we don't want to sit here until 1 a.m. Only one person should speak at a time. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand. If you want to raise your physical hand, that works, as we've done. If you want to raise your Zoom hand, as Mr. Schmidt often demonstrates at this time for me, you can do that too. Members and alternates, for all motions, in the interest of making sure we have a clear record, please plan on roll call vote so that the public and Sue Spang taking minutes can be very clear on the record. Only hosts are permitted to share screens at this time. Any documents to be shared must come through Jennifer, top left, at jlindo at East Lyme Town, her email, as required by executive order, all documents being discussed. Thanks, Dave. That's clapping here. That works. Basically should be in the hands of Ms. Lindo 24 hours prior to the meeting. This entire meeting is automatically recorded by Zoom, and upon the host logging out, the meeting will cease, and so will the recording. This meeting cannot continue without the host. And if we do need to take a break, we will take a quick vote to do so. We will note the time, and so on and so forth. Do I see a salmon with a hand in its mouth? I'm going to, Jen, I pulled up the incorrect agenda
Yep.
part. And we should make note of that we did have, we posted an agenda with a mistake that stated that our public hearing was still open, correct, Jen? And the update to the agenda was simply that it was no longer open. However, the matter that was for the public hearing is still open, meaning that the matter we're discussing is still open.
Correct. And it was my mistake when I did the agenda, so I own it.
All
It was
right.
me.
All right. And it seemed, I guess I would just check with Attorney Zamarka from a procedural standpoint. Is that not a big deal? He's muted.
Yeah, the public hearing was closed on the record at the last meeting, so there should be no prejudice. I would just note for the record that the matter itself is not open for public comment anymore. This is the time set aside for the agency to deliberate and discuss.
Right. That sounds, I think that's appreciated, and I will elaborate on that in case there's any members of the public here that have something to say regarding the application. Unfortunately, that time has passed, essentially, is what our attorney is saying. Anything that was received by us in writing has been put on the record. We've debated at length, and I think this evening we'd like to hopefully discuss a little bit of the information. So at this time, item 1, any additions to the agenda. If I may, with discussion prior to the meeting, there was a matter that seems relevant regarding our sidewalk that Mr. Diebel, Jason Diebel, would like to discuss with the commission. Do I have a motion to add an item to the agenda that is openly Mr. Diebel addressing the commission and anyone that might have attended the sidewalk? Sorry, Sue, that was long.
So moved.
So moved, all right. And
I'm sorry, could you state the motion and who said the motion?
so I stated a motion to allow Mr. Diebel to address the public and the commission that are here.
And who made the motion?
Jason seconded the I essentially suggested Jason move the motion, and Mr. Schmidt has seconded the motion. Pardon me for
Thank
one.
you.
Sorry, guys. All in favor of the motion from the top down? Mr. Diebel, are you, with a show of hands, in favor?
Yeah.
Ms. Chantrell, show of hands, in favor of this motion to add to the agenda? Yeah. Rosemary?
Aye.
Phyllis? Doreen, you're not technically seated. And then Mr. Fimminster down there. And Mr. Koch, thank you. And Mr. Schmidt?
Aye.
All right. So we have, and myself, we agree to add that to the agenda. So I think it might make sense from a bookkeeping standpoint to add that item right now, if that's okay. So I'd like to hand over the microphone to Mr. Diebel. Is that okay with you? And you can address everyone here.
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know who went on the site walk that through my in my professional capacity, I was exposed to a person who has tested positive for COVID-19. I believe the exposure happened on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. would put me squarely in the infectious range on our site walk on Saturday. I kept my mask on and did my part to keep 6 feet away from folks, but I wanted to make sure that everyone who was on the site walk knew that you could be potentially exposed to someone who was potentially exposed. I don't know if that means you have to get a test or not, but I just thought you would appreciate having that information. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Deagle.
Can you let people know if you get a positive test result?
I can. I'm comfortable with doing that. Yes.
Sir, Ms. Osfeld was addressing Mr. Deagle. So you took a test, Mr. Deagle?
I took a test today, yes.
Thank you.
Results should be in 2 to 5 days.
Thanks for your transparency. I know it is technically a personal thing, but I suppose it might be, if we feel that it's appropriate, you could let us know, and we could just tell everyone on Earth that you have COVID.
Sure.
Bad joke, right? All right. No, but I mean, I appreciate your transparency. I think that's the right thing to do. It's inconvenient, and there it is. So may everyone scan their minds if they were there. I, for one, was not there. Yes, no joking. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Deagle. The public hearings. Public hearing that we have, continuation of the application of Town of East Lyme Inland Wetlands Agency of a text amendment to amend Section 2.1 of the East Lyme Inland Wetlands Regulations to change the definition of a regulated activity by enlarging the distance of the boundary for a regulated activity from 100 feet from an inland wetland and or watercourse to 500 feet. It is at this time that it's been, 60 days or so that we have last discussed this crew. I wanted to see if anyone had any direct conversation, comments, so on and so forth, they'd like to enter into the record after a significant time, of hopefully being able to reflect on the scientific.
Hold on.
Mr.
Gary, I
Chairman,
can't enter anything into the record. It's closed.
Right. The public
Meaning-
hearing is
Closed.
In our discussion, sorry.
right, but our next item on the agenda is public delegations.
Hold up, this is the bad agenda again. I just printed the right one, but it's the wrong.
Throw it away.
I'm sorry, guys. I was going on autopilot reading. There we go. My mistake. Thank you. So skip everything I just said. I'd like to redact all of that. Item number 2, public hearings. There is a continuation of our application, but there is no longer an open public hearing. Thank you. My mistake. Item number 3, public delegations. Public delegations is a time when members of the public are invited to speak to the commission about certain matters, issues, or concerns related to approved wetland permits, and in-house proposals or general topics of discussion are open to comment. Agenda items, such as this agenda, referrals, applications subject to a decision by the commission, a public hearing, or in litigation may not be discussed. The members of the commission will not directly answer questions or make comment during delegations. So it is at this time, if there are any members of the public that would like to speak, Jen Lindo will unmute their microphones. And if we could, in an orderly fashion, if you guys know how to on your Zoom, you can put your hand up if a member of the public would like to say something. I imagine there aren't 50 people, but if there are people that would like to say something, this is the time we'd like to hear you speak.
I'm just going to go through one by one and just check with people. I think that's probably going to be the easiest thing to do. Mr. Long, did you want to make a comment in public delegation?
No, thank you.
Okay. I have a Dave and Pam. Did you want to make a comment during public delegation? Okay. Chromebook.
Can you hear me?
I can.
I just wanted to thank the delegation for coming out and taking the time out to look over the property of the future site of Harvest Christian Fellowship. And it's taken 25 years. We've been praying a long time for this, and just hoping everything goes well. I'm not sure what else really, to share. We want to work in the community, and people are hurting, and we want to be there for them. So
if we could, lovely message. I just want to say, let's save that comment for the time we discuss the application.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
And, you know, it's okay. It's merely procedural, so please don't think that I don't want to hear everything you're saying.
Okay.
It's fabulous. We can talk about all that during the actual application.
Okay, I guess that's it then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Sarah Klein. Did you have a comment for public delegation?
Greg Klein, but no, I do not have any comments.
Okay, thank you. I have a Marianne Milner. Did you have a comment for public delegation?
Yes, good evening. I just wanted to know, how can they build without affecting the wetlands since so much of that area is wetlands?
Are you talking about a matter that's on the agenda?
Well, this is public delegation, so did you want to hear from public? I know that it's no longer open for public hearing. I just found out about this.
Right. So
yeah,
if it's a matter that's on the agenda, they actually can't talk about it during public delegation.
Okay, then what's the purpose for public delegations then, please?
It's to talk about items that are not on the agenda.
Okay, and this can't be talked about because it's already a closed matter, is that right?
It can't be talked about it because it's on the agenda already, and there's time for public comment in that section of the agenda. Not on the wetlands regulation. That portion of the public hearing was closed at the August meeting. If you're talking about a different matter that's on the agenda,
Miss Milner, if I may, what is a specific matter you'd like to talk about, just for clarification?
I just wanted to know, how could they build on
Sorry,
this without?
may I just,
How,
1 second, if I could slow you down. Who's they?
how could the church and the?
All right, so I don't mean to sound rude. We're gonna talk about the church. We'll get to the church. It's just the same as I forget the gentleman's name, Chromebook CAFF. The same, in the same manner that I said, hey, now is not the time. It's not the time yet. It will come though.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry to be so direct. I just, you know, we try to stick to the rules here. It's kind of important. Thank you. Just be patient, and it'll come up. You know, we're originally, right now we're basically just looking at the application. In a few moments we're going to get to hear a presentation, details, so on and so forth. It's treated as very new in front of this commission. We're here to learn as much as possible about this application. Okay. Sorry, Jen, go ahead.
that's all right. I've got, I think, 3 more. Brendan, did you have anything for public comment, or are you sticking to just listening?
I don't have anything to say, thanks.
Okay, thanks. I have a Robert's iPhone. Did you want to say anything?
No, all set.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a phone number, 739-3830. Did you want to speak? I'm gonna guess that's a no.
I think they're still muted.
Oh, there we go. Barbara, did you want to say
Hey,
anything?
Jen.
Yep.
Hey, Jen. It's Barbara Johnston, Niantic, 35 Seacrest Avenue. I basically would like the commission or the agency to come up with some sort of definition or whatever for clear cutting. I've seen it happen in Florida, and it's really no good. But it is happening in East Lyme, and I totally have brought it to our inland wetland agent in charge, and it's happening even worse. Now it's really clear cut, and we need a serious definition for clear cutting, please.
So as I understand it, Ms. Johnston with a T?
Yeah.
You're charging the agency with a request to define in our regulations clear cuttings. Could you, was that your request? Sorry.
Well, it seems to be a problem that does happen, like I say, in Florida, when they clear cut everything in sight. I don't believe it should be done near our Long Island Sound, or Niantic Bay, or any area within the reach of our waters. And that has to be addressed under CAM. I understand, but I really think the Inland Wetland Agency needs to come up with a definition, and I understand there should be a permit. I haven't been able to find it yet, but it should not be allowed with the water runoff into Long Island Sound or even Niantic Bay.
Ms. Johnson, can I clarify? Is this regarding an application that's before us this evening?
No.
Okay. May I ask you, and we all appreciate your comment and concern. I know I speak for myself and all of the commissioners, and I hate to be the chairman that says, do some work, but
who is this? I don't know who this is.
I'm Gary Upton. I'm the chairman of the Wetland Commission.
Oh, Gary. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all right. Not to be confused with Mr. Gaishel. Not that he's a bad guy. We're just two different people. If you could, what I would ask, and all of the members of the commission can interject, but I think what we would appreciate to clarify your concern and what you're asking for, if you could send us an email addressed, you can send it to Mr. Gaishel at the town hall, but please address it to our commission.
Okay.
Then, basically the whys and the what fors and your concerns. If it's a paragraph, that's great. If it's as long as you'd like, we're happy to try and understand what you're asking for. We'll review our regulations, and we may say it's covered here or it's not covered here. But I think any members of the commission would like to add to that?
I appreciate you taking the time to explain that to me. I understand through state statute there has to be a permit issued for anything like that. Or I know this parcel has been approved by the inland wetland in a very serious wrong way. So I will definitely write to the Inland Wetland Agency, and like I say, I look for a permit issued to do that, and I have not been able to find it for over a year through DEP too.
So I just have a question. So is there a specific...
Let her know who you are. She's on the
Hi,
phone.
Barbara. I'm Rosemary Ostfeld, and I'm on the commission, and I just had a question about, is there a specific parcel that you are concerned about? Because maybe that could help us.
Most definitely, Rosemary, and nice to talk to you. Most definitely, there is a parcel just like that. I'm in public delegations, so I can give you the parcel, I guess, if you're interested. I know you are, but basically what I'm saying, it's already closed through the inland wetland, which I disagree with, and the parcel is in Old Black Point, and it's a 12-acre parcel.
And
So,
if
just to
it's not
clear...
before us,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
if I may, I appreciate the concerns that Ms. Johnston is raising, but we're starting to get very far afield of the purpose of public delegations. This is starting to turn into a mini public hearing. I think if Ms. Johnston has some concerns, she can raise them through the town, and if our wetlands agent feels it's something that needs to be brought to the agency, he will do so.
Who is that speaking, please? I'm sorry. I don't have a video or anything. I'm just talking on the phone.
Ms. Johnson, that was the town's attorney, Mr. Mark Zamarka.
Oh, yes, I know him. Okay.
All right. So yeah, if you could just, like I had originally suggested, let's, if you don't mind, please just send us a letter. We could take a peek at whatever your concern is. In there, you could address whatever you like, and we will be obligated to read it as long as it's addressed to our commission. Please send it to us, and we want to know about anything you're worried about.
Thank you very much, because I know you're, I believe, new to the being chairman. Am I right? Or
second time around here. It's been a few years.
Okay, good. All right, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you ever so much for listening anyway.
No worries. It's not just me. The rest of the commission certainly wants to, hear anything you have any concern about. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great evening.
You too, but I'm still not hanging up.
It's fine.
All right. Yeah, yeah. All right. We're going to mute you now.
Okay.
Take care, Ms. Johnson. Thank you. All right. Is everyone still there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Sometimes it's like that whole thing when you're on the phone, you're like, hey, you still there? So I'm going to, if I may, 1 second, I need to print the, Jen, did you realize the agenda that you updated didn't update on the materials on the website?
I posted it on the website. What do you mean?
The corrected agenda isn't, unless it's caching for some reason, the corrected agenda isn't the one that's pulling from the website materials. And not to over belabor.
It's there.
Okay, I'll be right back because I'm now just printing it from your direct email. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Well, I'm looking at it on line 2 from the website, and the line 2 is public hearings, and then public delegation is number 3.
Yeah, mine
Yeah,
too.
I also had the same issue where on the website for the materials, it still shows the
Showing
whole
that it's a public hearing.
agenda.
So it must not have posted.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't get it back until about 3:45. So I real
Yeah.
quick logged into the website to upload it, but maybe for some reason it didn't load.
All right. Are there any? It appears there aren't any other members of the public, but if anyone else would like to speak, no one else. All right. So we're moving on to item number 4. The good news is the items line up the same as they were. The acceptance of the meeting minutes of August 10th show cause hearing. Pardon me for a second. Does anyone have any comment here? This is the meeting in which we basically said we needed to do a redo, no? Do. Any comment from my team? All right, so also the meeting minutes of August 10th, 2020, the regular meeting. We did have our meeting. We just, minutes are as they stand. Does anyone have any corrections, updates, changes, things that they see as incorrect from those 2 sets of meeting minutes?
Do you have a motion for item A, for the show
Sorry,
cause?
I was going to co-join the 2, Sue, for efficiency. Essentially, do I hear a motion to approve items A and B of section 4, the acceptance of the minutes from both August 10th show cause hearing and August 10th regular meeting?
I will move we approve to get it on the floor and discuss.
All right. We have anyone else?
Kristen is seconding the motion.
Well, Mr. Christian Chantrella seconded the motion. All in favor of approving, there you go, I like that. All in favor of,
Now's the time for discussion.
all right, discussion, you're right, Dave, go for it.
No, I'm just saying now's the time. So now, go ahead, anybody who wants to discuss.
Mr. Daigle has his hands up, our ex officio. Mr. Paul Daigle, go ahead.
Yeah, before you act on this motion, have you adjusted who's sitting on the agency?
Not yet, sir.
So I don't know if you need to before you take action on the motion, but it's give you the opportunity to do so.
Yes, the relevant seated members for such meeting minutes. Was there anyone that wasn't in attendance? I do believe Ms. Doreen Ryan, despite not being a seated member for either of those meetings, was in attendance for those meetings, so she could approve the minutes, I believe.
I was not there. I am seated as a member at the moment,
sorry,
but I was not there.
Not Miss Jason. Sorry, Jason.
Yes, I was not at that meeting, even though I'm seated currently.
All right, so we're gonna kick you to the curb and sit Mr. Phimister at this time. Now we have our normal commission seated. And
Do we need to make a motion or anything to do that, or can we just do that based on what you just said?
I believe it's pretty simple, just to.
You do not need a motion to do that.
Okay, thank you. Just want to clarify.
Technically, I didn't even need a motion to add something to the agenda like we did, but we're just being overly, uptight, I suppose, myself, that is aimed at. So we have our regular seated panel here this evening. Now, Mr. Fimminster's here. Sorry to hear about your device issues. The motion stands and has been essentially verbalized by myself and brought by Mr. Schmidt. We had a second from Ms. Chantrell. Is there any discussion on approving those minutes from 2020, August 10th? Show cause hearing in the regular meeting. At this time, I will take a vote for the approval of such minutes. All in favor from the top down, Ms. Chantrell is in favor. Ms. Rosemary Osfeld.
Hi.
Ms. Philsberger, there you are. Moving over to Mr. Fimminster. And Ted Koch.
Aye.
And David Schmidt.
Aye.
And myself. We're all in favor of approving those minutes. Moving on to the next item, number 5. It is an ex officio report. Mr. Daigle, how are you again? And what do you have to say to the good people, sir?
Not much to add. At the Board of Selectmen, we did receive referendum approval to fund and commence the public safety building project. The contract has been signed with the contractor, and work there should start sometime in the next week or two once bonding is posted and so on and so forth. So looking forward to that moving forward. And other than that, there is an agenda on our item to talk about the new police enacting legislation that the state passed. So we'll have that discussion this coming Wednesday. And other than that, there's nothing of significance, and certainly nothing that directly affects the actions of your agency. So thanks for the opportunity to share that with you all. I do have one comment that I wanted to make, and it was regarding the POCD. The Board of Selectmen was presented that document at I think it was our last meeting, and very well done. A lot of effort by a lot of folks, and particularly members of your agency who participated. I want to thank you for all the hard work that went into that, and I know the Planning Commission is working hard to get it approved and issued by the end of December, which is a state requirement. So thank you for everyone's efforts associated with the POCD.
You're welcome.
I think that, yeah, namely Ms. Osfeld and from what I know, Mr. Gaishel, right? Anyone else get involved in that?
I'm sure there was members that participated in some of the public hearings, so there's a lot of contributions by a lot of folks. So
right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, guys. Is that all, Mr. Daigle?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, new business. The application of Harvest Christian Fellowship of Niantic for the construction of a church. Construction of an 8,454 square foot, church building, a 72-car paved parking lot, and associated improvements on 21.7-ish acres. Parcel located at North Bridebrook, East Lyme Assessors Map 24.0, Lot 7. Limited clearing, grading, and replanting of previously cultivated areas are proposed within a portion of the 100 upland review area. There will be no proposed activity within any wetlands area. All right. And at this point, I would believe the applicant or the applicant's attorney, Mr. Gaishel, if you'd like to interject with any of my statements at this point, I would seek your assistance and guidance. And at this point, I'd like to hand it over, I believe, to the applicant.
Joe Wren is here, I think, representing the applicant.
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. Did Gary Gaishel want to say anything before I get started?
I have nothing at this time. As you know, we conducted our site walk this past Saturday. Myself with Mr. Wren, another gentleman from his office, and I think a few members of the commission. It was a nice day. Great walk. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, at the beginning of the meeting, did you say that the applicants cannot share our screens? Are we not allowed to share our screen?
Right now it's turned on, Joe, so you can share your screen.
Okay. It's just a little bit easier. That way I can kind of walk you through the plans and answer any questions along the way.
And to elaborate on that, I think what would be important to clarify is it's the same thing that you would be doing if we were in town hall on the projector screen. So if there's any questions of impropriety or anything funny there, you know, of course we want to see what you have to show us, and we wouldn't want to limit your ability to do so, sir.
Yeah, this format actually makes it a little bit easier because we all could see it without squinting. It's all on our screens, and we can zoom in and move around much better than we can on a 2x3 piece of paper in person. So I trust everyone is well. I hope all your families are well. Thank you, Commissioner Diebel, for letting us know that. We will inform everyone else on our side that was at that meeting, just to let them know. And we really appreciate your honesty with that and letting us know that. And if somehow we could be informed, you know, if that does come back positive, I think that would be a little bit more of a concern for us.
Looks like Mr. Diebel does have something to say at the moment. He's raising his hand.
Chair acknowledges Mr. Diebel.
Hey, just procedurally, I just wanted to know if I am no longer seated here and Don's seated, maybe we should put someone else who was on the site walk, like Doreen, could be seated for this portion.
We have our regular seated, our full team on here, so I think I think this is something interesting. If I may, Mr. Wren, if you don't mind me, just to put a pin in where you were at. For the commission, I think it's great that we have boots on ground for obvious reasons. You know, might it be noted we have a different team of experienced people in a variety of different areas. Some people have a little bit of building knowledge and experience with blueprints and layouts and A2 surveys and whatnot that we experience here. So myself, I enjoy seeing it's fun to go do a site walk. I love the documents. I think unless there's a discrepancy, which is really not our purview if we have a certified engineer and soil scientist and so on and so forth that's saying things are as they are. I think it's great to be able to kind of pull on you guys that have been there, and perhaps even if a commission member or numerous haven't been there, I think it's more than doable. And I've always thought to mention that to everyone. So you brought up a good point, Jason. If you don't, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, you know, there's a few ways to skin the cat. So sorry, Mr. Wren, I didn't mean to take that as an opportunity to exploit my own agenda, but after you, sir.
Before you begin, let's just be clear who's seated, Don or Mr. Diebel?
Don. The commission, right? Yeah, Mr. Diebel, step down. Don is here as we move into all of this.
I stepped down. I'm gone.
Very well. Thank you.
Mr. Wren.
Yes, thank you. And it was a very nice day. It was a very informative site walk. I think there were some questions that were asked that we were able to answer. It's definitely nice, especially on a site like this, to be able to see the site as it's in its existing condition, you know, as it is today and as it's been for a number of years, to see where the building's going to go and to see the relationship of the proposed site work versus where the wetlands are and the pond and the brook and so forth. So it was, you know, it was very good that day, and I appreciate everybody that did come out for that site walk. Just to get started, and just kind of review the overall site location. In the plans, we have this map in the upper right-hand corner. This is North Bridebrook Road, and then we have Route 1, Boston Post Road here. Bridebrook comes down through the site, switches over to the western side of North Bridebrook Road and continues to flow south. The site is 21.7 acres. It's actually a lot from the Nathan Hale Farm subdivision. It's a leftover remnant lot. Just happens to be 21.7 acres. As you know, Bridebrook comes through it. There are wetlands and a couple of ponds associated with it. We are proposing to develop just a small portion of the site, and that portion of the site has been cleared and cultivated for a number of years. I went back and looked at the State Library 1934 aerial photos. It was cultivated then, almost with the same footprint. And the power lines that go through the property also were there back in 1934. So since 1934, the property hasn't changed much, but it has been cultivated. I didn't see any history of any orchard there, but it was just cultivated annual crops through there. So obviously over the years there were pesticides and fertilizers and things of that nature used. So we feel that this project actually, with the stormwater improvements that are and water quality enhancements that are being proposed, we feel that it's a betterment and improvement to the site and to the adjacent wetlands and water quality. We'll go through that in more detail. The site overall, again, the bold dark line there is the property line. This up here is the other lots of Nathan Hale Farms subdivision. A couple of those currently under construction right now as we speak. Down here we have North Brybrook Road and Woodrow Drive, which is a small cul-de-sac which has 6 houses off of that cul-de-sac. The proposal is to bring in an access driveway to the parking areas, a church building at this location, and then stormwater management here, and then another water quality basin at this location. From this map, you can see there are 2 identified ponds shaded in gray. There's one here, and there's one in the upper left. Bride Brook comes down along here, which is several hundred feet away from the building. Rich Snarsky, who is a wetland scientist and soil scientist, he flagged the wetlands on the property, and they were located by field survey. He attended the site walk with us as well. This pond here, he did find some salamander egg masses in the southwest corner. On the field walk, we did walk. We went past this wetland flag here, which is still there today. We went through this upland between the wetlands, and the commission members came over to view the pond, which has cattails on the outside of it, generally from this location. It is not a vernal pool because it does retain water all year long. But he did find, when he did his review, he did find egg masses in this location here. What you can see is the area that's dotted. All those areas are inland wetlands. So we have this one around Bride Brook and the pond, and then we have this wetland on the west side of the site as well. Offset from that dotted area or the wetland area, you can see this, the 100-foot review line, and it's labeled 100-foot upland review area, and also on this side. So the general constraints of this particular site, even though it's 21.7 acres, we have the wetlands and the ponds and the brook, and then the 100-foot review area as well. So you can see that just between the review areas and the property line, we're left with this portion of the property to develop. And we very carefully kept all of the parking area, the majority of any grading and any stormwater improvements outside of that 100-foot review area, as you can see. And we'll look closer at the plans with the contours and everything. The other site constraints, other than zoning on this property, there is a water main that comes up Woodrow Drive. There's an easement across this property, and that's what this hatched area is. This water main goes all the way up through to Nathan Hale Farm subdivision, and was intended to serve that subdivision and extend the water main. And remember, this lot was a part of that Nathan Hale Farm subdivision. So this water line with its easement would have served this property as well. In addition to the wetlands and the review area and the water main, we also have an electric right-of-way through here. There are some utility poles. There's a utility pole here, another one here, another one here. So there are overhead wires that go through this property. And again, the 1934 aerial shows those poles, not the same wires, but generally in the same location for the last 90 to 100 years, like that. And that's not proposed, that's existing, and it's proposed not to be changed at all. Same with the water main. getting into the more detailed plans, on the second sheet, where we have grading, should be called the utility and grading sheet. And these are the same ones that were posted on the website and provided to the town in paper copies. So here, these are the more detailed site plans with grading. We have the church building, as you saw. We have the 72-car parking lot. We did put the remaining spaces down here. We could not extend over this water main easement, and we couldn't change the grade or at least cut over that water main easement because we can't make it more susceptible to frost than it currently is. So we had quite a few constraints. You can see we're adding a little bit of fill here, but we're not cutting and we're not changing or adding anything proposed over that water main easement. The electrical overhead wires are here, and those aren't changing either, other than providing service to the new building. The water service can come right off of the water main that goes right by the proposed building here. So we don't have to run a trench all the way out to Woodrow Drive to get water service or power. It's basically all out available in the field there. All of this area that we're talking about is currently cleared, other than some minor brush clearing. We're not proposing really any clearing at all. You can see with this line type, that's the existing brush/tree line. Down in here for the stormwater basin, there's a little bit, but generally if you follow that around all the way through and up top, that's not changing. This area of shading here is the remainder of the 100-foot review area as labeled here. That is currently part of it's now a meadow, but it was a cultivated field for many, many years. All of that area is going to remain as is and allowed to just regrow. So woody vegetation, shrubs, whatever's out there naturally growing will be able to expand, fill in that 100-foot review area, and that is not proposed to be altered in any way. You can see there's just a little tiny bit of grading extending into the 100-foot review area, but it's very, very minor, and it's just to get to the existing contour. Again, over here, the dot dash line is the 100-foot review area, so you can see there's very, very minor grading, if any at all, within that review area. And remember, most of that review area in here is all open field right now as it is, so there's no major trees that will be taken down, a little bit of overgrown brush in this area, and that's it. The rest is a open meadow, overgrown cultivated field right now.
Mr. Wren, Chairman Upton, if I could talk real quick. I'm curious to the depth of your further presentation. Please don't take that the way it sounds. My apparent concern personally is that I feel that we should have a determination for the need for a public hearing on this application, in which you would essentially make this presentation all over again. For efficiency, would you allow or appreciate me to speak to the commission regarding that, or would you like to continue on?
I think it's important for the members who attended the site walk, and unfortunately 2 of them are alternates and are not voting right now. But I think it's very important for everyone to know the details. I know the members that attended the site walk, they were very comfortable having their questions answered, and they were very comfortable with our proposal out there in the field on the site walk, because we explained it all to this level of detail while we were out in the field as well. So I think it's important for the other members who were not there to hear, the entire presentation. And I'm nearly complete anyways. I just want to go over the stormwater.
Which is why I made it entirely. I just wanted to make sure it was, that's totally your call. The power's in your hands, and I'm enjoying seeing all of this and listening to you.
Okay, yeah, I'll just continue on, because the last thing I just wanted to really review was the grading, and then the stormwater and what we're doing for stormwater management, and that's what I'll get into now. But I just really wanted to show you unless you really study the plans and spend some time on them, some of the, these dots someone might think, what are they? So I just wanted to explain those and how we're returning the 100-foot review area back to, an actual buffer area, and leaving that, turning that back into nature. So the majority of the property will not be touched or disturbed. A lot of it within the review area is going to be allowed to turn back to natural. You can see where the building and the parking is, even to the nearest wetland edge. The pond that we reviewed, that I showed you on the overall plan, is further up to the left on this plan, so it's more than 300 feet away from the closest point of the building. Just for perspective, because now we're looking at a plan that's at a much bigger scale than the last one was. So the overall grading, the site grading goes from basically northeast or up in this right-hand corner of the plan down in this direction. You can see these are 2-foot contours. They're pretty well spaced apart, but there is a gradient across the property. So with building and parking, we need general, level areas for handicap access and to construct the building and so forth. So we cited the building at this location for all the purposes I previously mentioned, including zoning setbacks, zoning, landscape buffering, and so forth that we're going to include along the back property line, in the utilities, and all the wetland areas. So that was the best location for the building, given all the constraints we had to work with. And then we had to fit all the parking in around the building and have it accessible to the building once somebody uses the parking. So with that, we have the site sloping higher ground here, lower ground here, hence the practical location of the stormwater basin. The stormwater basin obviously is at the lower elevation, so all of the water from the roof, you can see the roof drain coming down here to the basin. All of the water from the parking lot. This parking lot here goes overland. There's no curb and no catch basins here. It's all overland flow. We have a crushed stone apron along all the downstream edges of the parking. So to inhibit erosion, allow some infiltration, and just some slowdown of water coming off the pavement before it hits the soil in the vegetated swale areas. From there, it follows the swale along this direction. Same thing for this parking area here, flows down off over the gravel into a swale. Both of these swales meet here, so we added some stone there to allow, again, to slow down velocities, even though these are very flat swales, but slow down any velocity there might be, allow some more infiltration. As it turns the corner, follows an overland swale with check dams. All these little features here are stone check dams that would be left in place to slow the flow, trap sediments, trap debris, and so forth, before it makes its way into the stormwater basin. On this side of the road, we have this portion of the parking. We can't drain this across the street this way, so this comes overland to this point, and we have a culvert that takes that to the basin. So all of the parking area, all of the rooftop, every ounce of that water makes its way to the stormwater management basin. The driveway in this area is a normal crown, so it slopes off from the center line, basically from here up toward the building, and that allows for overland, curbless overland flow on both sides of the road. On the right side, we have this traps, again, as I mentioned, and brings it across, but here this point is too low to get it into that cross culvert. So we have a roadside swale that gets it down to this culvert, and then that culvert carries it into the second one. The reason for a second pond is just because we have these lower elevations that can't make it uphill to this pond or basin, and so this lower basin will receive all the runoff from the remaining portion of the paved driveway, get it in here for water quality and peak rate of runoff management, and get it overflow into the existing system. This pond overflows to the existing drainage system after it treats the water quality volume. This basin treats the entire site, all up here, water quality volume. This is an outlet control structure that only lets a very small amount of water through the basin, through the pipe to this point. Larger storms, this basin has to be designed for the regulations up to the 100-year storm. So it is designed for that and reduces the peak rates of runoff from the 2 through the 100-year storm. Uses this outlet control structure if there's a storm of a significant magnitude, 50, 100 years, or more than 100 years, it's able to spill over the emergency grate here and get into the pipe and flow out. Once it gets out at this location, there is a plunge pool, again, to slow the velocity of the water, trap any final sediments that made their way through. And then it gets into this natural swale, as you can see, without really any grading at all. There's a natural swale here, and gets through almost 60 feet, over 59 feet of overland flow before it hits the wetland. So there's no point discharge into any wetland. There's no point discharge any closer than 59 feet to a wetland. This is the only point discharge we have on the site. This one here goes into the drainage system. And again, this is only an overflow. This is not a low basin. It's set up higher so the water could pond and infiltrate. If it does need to exceed that level, it gets into the grate and then goes out into the town system. The drainage computations show that the peak rates of runoff to the system in Bride-Brook, or not in Bride-Brook, in Woodrow Drive are less than the existing, less than or equal to the existing conditions because of the basin and the mitigation, and the peak rate of runoff to this point, to the edge of the wetlands here, is also less than or equal to the existing conditions. Lastly, I just wanted to note that we do have paved driveway, paved parking, rooftop. Not only do these basins knock down the peak rates of runoff to pre-existing conditions or less, they also treat the water quality. So we do have water quality volume management within these basins in accordance with the DEP manuals, as you're very familiar with. The basins are planted with plugs every 18 inches. They're not just seeded, they're planted with plugs, soft sedge, rush, and things like that, of that nature that were recommended by Rich Snarsky, who's the wetland scientist on the project. And the entire basin bottom that would support those plants are planted with that, and then the slopes of berms are planted with a standard grass mixture. The bottom of this water management basin is planted with the same plants, and their main purpose is to they're obviously indigenous natural plants to the area, and they uptake nutrients of stormwater. They cleanse the stormwater for the water quality volume before it's let out to the surface. And even when it is let out of the big basin, it still has overland flow prior to making it into any wetland. So overall, we feel this is an improvement rather than the cultivated field with the fertilizers and pesticides over the last 80 to 100 years. Out there flowing directly unimpeded into the buffer and into the wetland in Bride-Brook. So we feel that this is an improvement for the site. If I just may add, Scott Long and Pastor Randy are here from Harvest Christian Fellowship. If they want to say a few words, they may be interested in that. I know Pastor Randy spoke under public delegation quickly. This has been a dream of theirs for the last 25 years, and it's becoming reality. So they really appreciate your help along the way.
Mr. Wren, is that the conclusion of your presentation then?
It is. Thank you.
All right. If you don't mind unsharing your screen so we can see the two gentlemen that you spoke about. And Jen, you have that there? Great.
Yep. Pastor Randy, if you wanted to go ahead and speak. You're muted. There you go.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. And again, those of you that were able to look at the property and those who are here tonight, Again, my name is Pastor Randy Hyde. I've pastored this church for 25 years. We started out in Connecticut Yankee. We went from there to the Niantic Cinema. We went from there to the dollar store in town near the Chinese restaurant. From there to a firehouse. I would be preaching and the fire engines and sirens would go off. And then we've been at the property of Bridebrook since 2004. We've been involved in a number of community activities. Our hearts are with not just building a church, but more importantly, with trying to help people that are hurting. And so we've been involved in, East Lyme Days, passing out free water, the light parade. We've been involved in food pantries, such as Care and Share, and then passing baskets out during the holidays. We've been going into the convalescent home on Bridebrook to minister to the shut-ins twice a month. And then we have an addiction and emotional depression family type of a service on Friday nights to encourage people that are struggling. We have marriage enrichment programs that take place once a month. My heart isn't into a building as much as just reaching people. My mom was an alcoholic and a drug addict. I grew up very, very rough, very poor. I could tell you the stories. But we're in rental units right now, and we are known in the community, not by everybody, but as a storage unit church. And so our heart is really to have a place where we could worship and also just encourage people and reach people. And certainly during this day and age, what we've been going through with COVID, everything is all the statistics are through the roof. The suicides, the drug addictions, the family issues. My wife and I are very, very busy in the counseling area of that. And so we're just, we've been praying for 25 years and we're excited about this and looking forward. Hopefully this door will open up for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pastor Randy.
If you guys still need me to say it, my name is Scott Long. I live at 34 Legendary Road in East Lyme and go to Harvest Christian Fellowship. I'm also a deacon there. And as this has progressed over the past, I've been there for 10 years, and as it's progressed over, say, the past 5 or 6 years, where every time we think we're about ready to go forward, there's always a big hard no. We've gotten to the point where if it weren't for COVID and all the stuff that's around that, everybody's been saying yes, and we're very excited about that. And to have this property where it's located, optimally, it could have better access to Main Road, but it's a beautiful place for the chance to get some healing for some people. That's really what it comes down to. I'm really not sure what else I can say other than what Pastor Randy has already said. And it's good to be in front of you guys. Thank you for your time.
And thank you too, Pastor Randy and Deacon Long. We appreciate your application and you just being here and talking to us like normal people. Is there anyone else, Mr. Wren, from, or you guys, anyone else that might have anything else to say regarding this from the applicant's side?
No. In your application, we did include a letter from Richard Starsky, who evaluated the site and flagged the wetlands and evaluated the ponds. Other than that, he was at the site walk. He was able to answer questions or, support what I was saying at the site walk. He's not on this call tonight. I felt that between his letter and his attendance at the site walk that we had that covered. In a future meeting, if you'd like him to, to come to the meeting, that's completely fine as well.
Mr. Wren, do you have a traffic study or projections for, cars from a loading standpoint? Not from a planning standpoint, but more from a on-site pollutants running into the detention pond. Do we have any projections or numbers for that?
No, we have a 72 car parking lot. There's no study on that. And typically not one is required. And that's why we have the stormwater management basin. We do have a traffic report. That's more of a, zoning related matter. Pastor Randy probably could speak better to this, but generally they only have a mass on Sunday mornings. So the site would only mainly be used on Sunday mornings, other than some, minor gatherings during the week and on Saturdays. But for the most part, the congregation would meet only on Sunday mornings. So it would be one time a week on a Sunday morning. So it's not a heavy retail use, like your Costco or your Stop and Shop, where you get constant in and out of traffic and various types of vehicles. It's just one time on Sunday, then they're gone for a week. So I think it's a very, very low and intensive use for that parking lot.
Understood. All right.
Chairman Upton, I think that Mr. Schmidt has a question.
The chair recognizes Mr. Schmidt. Yes, yes, sir.
Just for the record, Mr. Wren, what is the number of current members of this church?
I believe that question was asked at the site walk, and I believe Pastor Randy's response was 60 to 70. And he's nodding yes.
Just wanted to get it on the record. Thank you.
And one would imagine, with the capital expense of a church, would you hope to expand that congregation? I mean, you're always reaching out to grow, right? If I may, Pastor Randy. He's muted though. Jen, could you unmute him?
He has himself muted.
Ask him down. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'm always looking to reach, people. We would go to double services if that took place. But we're always looking to help people, not necessarily for the numbers or anything.
Right. So you're saying, you might do 2 on a Sunday or something midweek. You would build the church out that way. It's not like you're going to try and pack the place with 300 people.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Thank you.
Seems to be the model that is prevailing. All right. At this time, is that everything from the applicant, Mr. Wren?
Yes, I believe so, unless there are any additional questions for us. I don't know that there's much more I can add at this time.
One more quick question.
1 second. At this point, I just want to make sure I'm going to do exactly what you're after. If the rest of the commission, please open for questioning. It appears Mr. Schmidt would like to go first. Go ahead, Mr. Schmidt.
Just one more quick question. How many people will your sanctuary seat under this current plan?
Joe?
The latest architectural plan, I thought I remembered 200. I think had a seating capacity for 200. Is that correct? Scott may know.
Deacon Long has something to say. You're muted, Mr. Long.
Sure. The current plan has it at 222 seats.
Understood. And presuming that not every single person drives a car, right? People come together, so on and so forth. Ms. Chantrell, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do just have one quick question. I apologize. I wasn't at the site walk. We were celebrating a family milestone birthday. What is the soil type of the property where the parking lot and the church is to be built? Just because I see a lot of wetlands, I'm just curious how wet that soil is.
I believe it's a woodbridge. It does show on one of the plans. I'm trying to see if I could see it quickly to point it out to you. A lot of that soil, obviously there's deep topsoils there from the 100 years of cultivation. That soil cannot, it's organic in nature and can't be under building footings and foundation and under parking lots and so forth because it's susceptible to frost. And we have some grading, as we discussed earlier, so all that soil, the top layers of soil will be removed and replaced with a structural fill type of material.
Could you state, just for clarity for the record, Mr. Wren, the soil type one more time?
I believe it's Woodbridge. I'm going through the plans. I know we have it in the plans somewhere. I'm going through, try to find that. Once I find it, I'll let you know. But I believe it is, the upland soil is a Woodbridge. But it's a non-wetland soil. It's a, it's a non-wetland soil. Obviously, Rich Snarsky went out with his auger and flagged the wetlands, and the edge of the wetland is the wetland soil and the upland soil. Just from memory again, I believe it's Woodbridge, but I'll find it for you and I'll let you know once I get the answer to that.
And I apologize if I missed it. Is this going to be septic or how?
Yeah, so there is public water, as I had mentioned, but there is no public sewer available there. So there is a septic system shown just to the west of the building under the parking lot.
Okay.
And that's, the parking lot is well more than 100 feet away from the wetlands. So obviously the septic would be well more than 100 feet from the wetlands.
And how do you design septic for church versus residential? Is it, I mean, because you're not using it as frequently, right? As it's once a week, on Sundays is when the population is going to be there. So is the septic field going to be smaller than commercial properties?
Nope, we can't. There's really no credit in the public health code, the technical standards, to reduce the capacity if you only use it once a week. We basically have to design it like it's used with that many people every day.
Okay.
So it's designed properly. The public health code technical standards do have some guidelines for gatherings, religious gatherings and things like that, and that's what we've implemented into the design. All of that information is within the plan set that we provided. Past the, let's say, I think sheet 5 of 8, we have all of the descriptions of that, all the sanitary system design criteria. And underneath the table in the upper right-hand corner on sheet 5 of 8, the sanitary system design criteria, we have all the explanation of the worship service areas, the office areas, the Sunday school areas, social events, things that will be occurring on those Sundays all together. And it's probably well over designed, but it's definitely not under designed.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Just moving through, if you guys don't mind, if you don't have a question, don't say. Ms. Ostfeld, do you have a question? No.
Nope.
Phyllis Berger, do you have a question? No. Let me see. Mr. Schmidt, you asked a few questions. Do you have any further questions, sir? And let me see. We have Mr. Fidminster. Is that a no for? Sorry, I can't hear you, Don. You're good. Looks like a shaking of the head. Mr. Koch, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. So it's like I had, my contention would be I feel that trying to be congruent with past applications. It seems these are very, very nice people, and their intention is only the best, and it seems the use is fairly light. These are my personal opinions, not that of the commission. It does appear that there could be, if it were to turn from a church into a potential event center, if it were built and then, who knows, a change of use or something were to happen, it seems there could be 59 feet we have from a wetland outflow from a detention basin. We do have what I believe, without getting into Miss Milner, because at this time, Ms. Milner, it is appropriate only for the applicant to talk to us, but we can say that we have public concern. It is my personal opinion that we would have a public hearing for this application. I'd like to hear the comments of the commissioners on that matter if I can, and anyone feel free to go for it, or just, I'll try to acknowledge you if you throw your hand up. Anyone, any comments?
Judging by what I've seen on the site walk,
Mr. Schmidt speaking. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, judging by what I've seen on the site walk and the total review, I walked all the way down to the edge of the pond, through the woods, all the way back out. And from my understanding, the impact would be extremely minimal. I personally do not believe we need a public hearing for this application.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission? Mr. Koch, did you put your hand up or were you just seated? Sorry.
I did not put my hand up.
All right. Anyone else? Ms. Chantrell, go ahead.
I agree. I think that because the land has already been cleared and they're not doing tree clearing, and this is a good purpose for this property. I do think because we are adding a lot of impervious surface and there are a lot of neighbors that are abutting the property, I do think that it warrants a public hearing to hear what the neighbors have to say about the property. The river does run right through it and there is a lot of wetland, so I think it's only fair for them to be allowed to speak as well. That's my opinion.
All right. Any other commissioners for comment? So I suppose at this time it would be my opinion to potentially hear a motion to take this application to public hearing. As the chair, I generally refrain from doing so, but Ms. Spang, I'm going to make a motion. I would make a motion that the applicant, Harvest Christian Fellowship Church, and their application be required to go to public hearing.
I'll second.
And I have a second from Ms. Chantrell. At this point, we can, as Mr. Schmidt astutely reminded us, we can further discuss. I want to make sure that the very kind gentleman from the church understand this is not a belaborment or a delay, other than in perhaps a slight bit of time. We have applications that are less invasive, not to say this is invasive, but we've had applications where we've had public hearings and outcries against certain things, and I'm not even implicating one way or another whether that's the case, but it is a matter of, in my personal opinion, fairness and rightness to make sure that if someone has something to say, they can say it. Whether it's fact, whether it's not fact, that's for us to determine at that time, and if there's evidence on the record, as our attorney and numerous board members will clarify as we go forth, we just want to hear what they have to say, and we'll consider all things. You have a very capable and esteemed engineer that's working on this for you, and you guys have put your things together. There's no doubt. So the motion stands. If at this time, is there any other discussion that any other commissioners would like to have? Mr.
Mr. Chair, I'm not a member of the agency, just your staff, but I would point out in determining whether or not an application requires a public hearing, Section 9 of the regulations.
Yes, sir.
Section 9.1 says the Inland Wetlands Agency shall not hold a public hearing on an application unless the Inland Wetland Agency determines that the proposed activity may have a significant impact on wetlands or watercourses, comma, a petition signed by at least 25 persons who are 18 years of age or older and who reside in the municipality in which the regulated activity is proposed, comma, requesting a hearing is filed with the Inland Wetland Agency not later than 14 days after the date of receipt of such application, comma, or the Inland Wetland Agency finds that a public hearing regarding such application would be in the public interest. So we have not received a petition. That said, as this meeting is just to determine whether or not the application needs to go to a public hearing or not, we can't render any decision on it obviously, because it has to stay on our agenda for at least 15 days pursuant to the statutes and our regulations. So that said, I don't know, based on what we heard from Mr. Wren, that there were any potential significant or likely significant impacts to the wetlands that would warrant a public hearing. So I would then just turn to public interest. And I would just note, we know Mary Ann had indicated that at public delegations, her interest relative to the number of homes on Woodrow Drive. We also, again, relative to the rest of town of 19,000 people. So I'll just leave that for you to discuss as you will. Thank you.
Yeah, on the last matter, I think it's dangerous to say we've only got one person here. There could be, and this is just my response, I'm not asking for a discussion. It's dangerous to say, hey, there's only one person here. We know that we have some notice problems. That's something that the agency is working on. Ms. Berger had really stressed saying, you know, at one of our last discussions regarding the review area, we want to signpost things, and we've had a lot of disgruntled members come in from the town and say, we didn't know this was happening. So that is my own, again, my opinion is to be careful. I think it's because of the nature of things and people speaking up. I always believe when there's one, there's a few. I'm not saying when there's one, there's many. And I don't know that it would make sense to silence people, that it's a frustrating thing that's happened on applications. As for the potential likelihood of an impact to the environment, we all have seen our past rulings and decisions on other applications where there are detention basins and outflows and so on and so forth. And again, trying to stay congruent with our own intelligence, I suppose I should state on the record, my concern is that the detention pond and its outflow and its proximity to the wetland. And if there were a pollutant in that detention pond, it would be of concern. It is not me saying that it's my opinion one way or another that that detention pond will most definitely pollute the wetland, but I do feel further investigation, discussion, and information could be discussed by this commission. Those would be my responses to Mr. Gaishel's comments. Again, just if anyone else has any input on those, that's my concern. Yes,
yeah,
Mr.
It was a 72 car parking lot was the number?
Yes.
Correct.
It seems to me that a parking lot of that size with a septic tank under it is something that the public should get to weigh in on.
All right. Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Zamarka.
As a point of order, in light of what Mr. Gaishel read out of your regulations, you may want to consider amending your motion as to what basis you are citing for the motion for a public hearing, whether you believe it's the public interest or a finding of some significant impact.
It seems we would want to say both public interest and significant impact. I see nodding from Mr. Koch. It seems on one front, and I've got Ms. Rosemary. So, Sue, because we would, as suggested by Mr. Zamarka, the reason for public hearing would be public interest and also potential for an impact, whether significant or not. The question is to be determined. The potential for the significant impact. Does that make sense?
Well, would you like to restate a motion? Right now you've got applicant Harvest Christian Fellowship should be required to go to public hearing. Do you want, is that where you want to add on your reasons?
Mr. Chair, just for the
Hold on. Hold on a second. Let's get this motion tight before we snowplow into the other stuff.
Well,
so
I was going to help you with the motion.
Oh, go for it.
That word potential, the regs do not actually use it. It says, unless the Inland Wetland Agency determines that the proposed activity may have a significant impact on wetlands or water courses.
So may have, okay. So both may have a significant impact and that there is public interest. Sue, does that make sense?
So you want to you want to add that on to the end, right? So again, I'm reading the original motion is the applicant Harvest Christian Fellowship should be required to go to public hearing.
Due to public interest.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, so.
It's all right. You can go ahead. I'll tell you if they're wrong. and may have pardon me.
Significant.
How did you word it, Mr. Gaishel? Significant impact?
Correct.
So just to clarify, now that the motion has been tweaked, I want to make sure that the motion that was seconded by Ms. Kristen Chantrell, I don't want to grandfather in changes that she agreed to and say, oh, hold on, that's not what I'm saying. Is that Ms. Chantrell?
Yes, I'll still second the motion.
All right. Any other further discussion on this motion? All right, and at this point, I'm going to take a vote on the motion. I'm going to start with myself. I'm in favor of the motion. Ms. Chantrell?
Yes.
Ms. Rosemary Ostfeld?
Yes.
Ms. Phyllis Berger? And moving down to, sorry, Mr. Schmidt. You're muted, Dave.
I would vote yes. I don't want to deny the public, but I didn't think it was necessary, so I'll still vote yes.
All right, and moving over to Mr. Fimminster.
Oh, yes.
And Mr. Koch?
Yes.
All right. The ayes have it. There are no other people here to vote against. And I will clarify, Ms. Milner, procedurally, this isn't that we don't want to talk to you this evening, but this is not the time or the forum. When the public hearing comes forth, that would be your time to do so, along with anyone else that might be here listening that has something good or bad to say. We're here just to hear. I believe this is a fairly efficient matter, but we look forward to hearing comment. All right, so we're going to move on from that to the next item, the pending application, item number 7. We are moving on to the application of Town of East Lyme Inland Wetland Agency for a text amendment to amend section 2.1 of the East Lyme Inland Wetland Regulations to change the definition of regulated activity by enlarging the distance of the boundary for a regulated activity from 100 feet from an inland wetland and or water course to 500 feet. So back to where we were a while ago. Sorry, I wanted to rip right into that thing off the top. But we appreciate Christian Fellowship, and we're moving on here to this item. How does anyone feel okay about just a 5-minute quick break?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
So we got a second for Mr. Koch. The motion is for a 5-minute break. All in favor? The time is 8:36. Show of hands real quick for efficiency. Commission members, please. Show of hands. All are in favor. No one's opposed. 5-minute break. Meet you back here at 8:41, 2-ish. Okay, guys? We have the public waiting, so not because I don't want to talk about water, because
Nope,
that's
nope,
what
that's
we're
what
here
I
for.
said. When you're ready, go.
It's 8:47. This is the East Lyme Inland Wetlands Commission. It's 8:47 p.m. on October 19th, and I'd like to call this meeting back to order after a short recess. And we were back on letter A under item number 7, pending applications. Application of Town of East Lyme Inland Wetland Agency for text amendment to our regulations, previously read into the record, changing our review area from 100 feet to 500 feet. Good evening again to our commissioners. I think we've spoken about this a good bit, and I believe we've had a lot of good discourse back and forth here. And this evening, I don't know if anyone has taken the time to review the record. I think it's important that we would stay focused at this point in our discussion, because we're no longer speaking to the public. I think it's important we stay focused on the record and discussing our remembrance and facts of the record. So does anyone have anything, before I myself go, does anyone have anything that's jumping out at them they'd like to talk about?
I would, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so specifically I was speaking to the commission, but we'll we'll start. Mr. Zamarka has something he'd like to obviously address us with. Mr. Zamarka, go ahead. The floor is yours,
Yes,
sir.
thank you. Most times when one of our town boards or commissions is faced with having to come to a decision on a certain matter, as you are with this tonight, we as town council remind the commission or agency of what their charge is, what the parameters are of what they're doing with the particular application. The usual procedure for the agency is after the public hearing is closed, you engage in discussion and deliberation as you're doing tonight. And then after that, staff is instructed to draft resolutions, usually one approving and one denying. And then at the following meeting, those resolutions are discussed and voted on. As we know from the public hearings in this matter, whatever decision you make is going to be highly scrutinized and will most likely be appealed. It's important then that you very carefully consider the application and the decision, and it's also very important that you state your reasons for your decision, whatever it may be, on the record. Connecticut law requires a land use agency, which is what you are, to state on the record the reasons for any decision it makes. That's why drafting a resolution, a carefully drafted resolution after deliberation and discussion is very important. Again, to remind you, I know we discussed this quite a bit the last time, any decision you make regarding any increase, if that is what your decision is, has to be supported by substantial evidence in the record. Substantial evidence is defined as evidence that affords a substantial basis of fact from which the fact in issue can be reasonably inferred. Sometimes it's easier to define substantial evidence by what it is not. In the case of an inland wetlands agency, a general non-specific evidence or speculation regarding a possible or potential impact is not considered substantial evidence. Potential for impacts, as I noted, are not considered to be substantial evidence. The Connecticut Supreme Court in 2001 came out with a case, Queech versus the Inland Wetlands Commission of the town of Branford, that did note that an inland wetlands agency, does have the right to make a change in its regulations so long as that change is reasonably designed to effectuate the purposes of the wetland statute. In that case specifically, they upheld the increase of the upland review area from 50 to 100 feet because there was substantial evidence in the record. In that case, the substantial evidence specifically cited was the deep URA guidelines, which are part of the record in this instance, as well as testimony received on the record. According to the Queech case and applying it to our case here, what you would be looking at to qualify as substantial evidence to support any decision you may make is that specific evidence that any increase in the upland review area is necessary to protect East Lyme wetlands. Evidence not related to East Lyme wetlands would not be considered substantial evidence on appeal. In asking that you carefully review the evidence in the record, I took the liberty, not the liberty, but I looked at a couple of exhibits that had been entered into the record. I picked out two at random, and they are exhibit MMMM and NNNN. The quadruple M exhibit is from James McBroom, dated November of 2002. It's regarding inland wetland and watercourse review areas. I would not presume to get into any of the substance on it. As noted, as town council, we advise the commission on law and procedure. In terms of procedure, the McBroom article sets out a 5-step process for review and evaluation of an upland review area. It basically sets out a roadmap. Exhibit NNNN was from the Connecticut Conservation and Inland Wetlands Commission's agency. It was in 2006. On page 3 of that specific exhibit, they discuss municipal decisions to increase the upland review area. It notes some towns that have, and it notes that those towns that have increased have adopted larger regulatory areas around specific water bodies. At the bottom of page 3, it also notes that local communities need to evaluate the wetlands and watercourse resources within their own communities, and based upon that evaluation, establish appropriate distances for review of potential regulated activities. The reason I bring these 2 exhibits up is because when you look at them, they are exhibits that were offered by the commission, and read together or even separately, they set out a roadmap as to procedure that is recommended to be followed in these matters. I don't believe in this case that there has been the evaluation of the East Lyme wetlands specifically, or that we have necessary evidence that may be considered substantial evidence.
While I appreciate the selection of these pieces, it seems to contradict your statement that you randomly selected these. It seems you've driven down to find things to say that we've not done our job correctly. Because on the record,
not at all. Not at all.
on the record, you just said you randomly selected those 2, and they just happen to be the ones that you're citing. Go ahead. I'm just putting that in the record. Go ahead. Continue.
That's all I had to say. I just want you to understand that there is evidence that the commission itself submitted that may be read on appeal as undercutting what you're attempting to do.
I mean, I guess you could have picked the stuff that said that pollutants travel 1,600 feet, but that's okay. You picked that stuff, and I understand. Perhaps random wasn't the right word, but that's.
Chair, I would, because in my memo that nobody wanted to read, with all due respect, I did.
For efficiency, I would appreciate if we don't cut each other off.
Yes. But I would note that Exhibit LLL, the effects of highway-related pollutant on groundwater quality of turfy swamps and the Changbai mountain area. One is relative to China, but 2, in looking at that, they noted that the water quality in these contaminants were.
Mr. Gaishel, I don't think we should discuss the details of the stuff entered in the record at this point. That's dangerous. I would like to stop you.
Why would that be dangerous? Because those are the items that were entered into the record. We can discuss them.
I have a question. Isn't this time supposed to be used for the committee members to discuss this rather than having opinions stated by non-committee members?
Please hold on. Mr. Gaishel, if we want your input on that, we will ask for it. Thank you. We understand it's important to you to comment on. But at this time, none of the commission has instructed such. It appears that our attorney had a disclosure to make about a few randomly selected articles. I see Mr. Daigle getting ready to come in here. Ms. Osvald, let's just stay on track, for efficiency, right? You're not. I don't disagree or agree with you, but I think it's important we don't get into the weeds on the validity of these pieces of information. We conducted a public hearing. The importance of what we did was to conduct a public hearing and hear what the public had to say. And I really think we need to double down on that information, including the supporting requested scientific documentation that this agency took a lot of time to put together. And we really just laid out a lot of information that was requested. Mr. Daigle, go ahead. What do you have, sir?
I'd like to make a recommendation that the agency members have their discussion and then give the opportunity of the town's agent and the town's lawyer to participate when you guys are finished. They're not, my opinion, and I could be wrong, they're not trying to sway your vote. They're trying to make sure that your decision can stand up in a court of law based on the evidence that was presented. So understand you as agents of the agency have the right to have a discussion and to vote. So my recommendation would be to allow that to take place and then ask the town representatives to share their points of view as necessary. So you do have the right as an agency to talk amongst yourselves, and I'd welcome you to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Daigle. Understanding we have, I think it was important, I agree with Mr. Daigle's statement. I think it's important that we do take heed of our attorney's advice. That being said, as for getting back into statements about pieces of data and chicken picking, certain things that we do or don't like from the record, it's a little dangerous. I think we could be here for a whole nother 6 years doing this.
And I agree with you, Gary, but remember, every piece of evidence can be used to support
Right.
or not support your decision. So keep that in mind as you have your discussion. And as Attorney Zamarka said, make sure you give Gary the opportunity to clearly identify the reasons for your vote and what they're based on. There's certainly a difference of opinions in many of the articles that were submitted, and they are. You can't change that record. It is what it is, and depending on your decision, one side or the other may bring forward some of the evidence that's been submitted to argue their case. So I think that heed that warning is good to specifically say why you want to approve whatever it is you decide to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Daigle. Fellow commissioners, I think it's important at this time that doing essentially a roll call will go down from the top to the bottom. What I don't want to continue to do, and I've seen other commissions and chairs run, contentious matters in the same manner. Each person will be able to make a statement at this point, perhaps discuss questions about things. At the closure of doing so, any new data that the commission would like to discuss with each other, perhaps I say that I think that something happens when something happens, and it creates a new question. We'll do a second round of this following. Does that make sense? So we're going to go through for a little information, concerns, questions. Then we'll go through a second time. It's okay if the second time or the first time you say, hey, I've heard enough, I don't want to talk. And it's great if you've got a lot to say. It doesn't matter. And I'm going to continue just to use the layout in the Zoom. I'm presuming we all have the same layout. Is that okay with you guys? Does that make sense for efficiency? So we don't sit here doing the round and round wagon?
We do not have all the same, we don't all have the same layout, Gary, so just so.
Okay. We'll go on mine then. So Phyllis, if I don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't mean if I am, yeah. Would you like to pass on a first round of comments, Phyllis? Pass. All right, that was a pass. So continuing on, I'm going to skip myself. Rosemary, I just want to be efficient here. So Rosemary, concerns, questions, comments, review of the record, etc. This is the time in which perhaps if you have something to say, I'd love to hear what I know everyone wants to know what you have to say, as we want to hear what everyone has to say.
Would anybody be open to using a little bit of this time to go through the record and take a tally of people who are opposed and who are in support of this motion that we put forward, and also just identify any key pieces of evidence that we think would be important if we were to decide to approve any increase in the upland review? Would anybody else be open to that? That's my question to the committee.
I can tell you, as someone that reviewed the 1,596 pages, very well collated by the Miss Jen Lindo. Thank you so much for the hard job that is to do. I counted exactly what you just asked for, Rosemary, and it took a lot of time. I did not take a point to say these are important, pieces of data that should be added, but I did collate exactly what you asked for, because that's where I kept going to. I'm like, what does the public say? Who supports it, and how do they support it? And some of these, we got some random numbers. How many people supported these random numbers? So I can tell you, you don't want to do that during this time. That would take a very long time. I can enter that into the record when it's my time to speak. It's for that reason. There's another suggested perhaps methodology we could consider. I'll get to after I run through everybody.
Mr. Upton, can I just kind of short circuit?
Where are you? There you are. Go ahead.
I'm here. I think the record speaks for itself, and I think it's sufficient to say that the balance of the public supported an increase. I was keeping track of who spoke and who didn't. More people were in favor of it than against it. And then there was this an enormous petition signed by many, many people. So the record does speak for itself, and whoever reviews the record will see that. And I don't think we have to go over it orally right now. Okay. But I think
I do have the numbers. That's the good news. So I'll enter that quickly and efficiently at some point.
Thanks,
All
Ted.
right.
That's helpful from like a legal perspective, so thank you.
So, Mr. Koch, if I may say, you feel that the record from the public, can you say that one more time so we have it very succinctly?
Yeah, I would say that the majority of the public is in favor of expanding our upland review area.
Okay. And I think it's the right time for me to go into saying, if I may, in specificity say, there were, from my collation, welcome to check me, there were 2 parties that supported increasing the review area to 300 feet. There were 4 parties that supported directly to increase the review area to 400 feet. So 300 was 2, 400 was 4. We also have, I had a hard time with this because we have some kind of general supporters that say like, for example, support was like, if the commission thinks, I trust the commission, so on and so forth. We had what I could count, and it's a lot of text to read, but what I could count, there were 7 people that said basically, if the commission, I support an increase, but not a non-specific increase that says there should be an increase, and I support whatever the commission decides. And then the general 4, meaning specifically for 500 feet, was 186 individuals. So that's what I counted. It's that I took that from, so the record was clear, I took that from the documents A to Z, double A to ZZ, triple A to GGG, items HHH to ZZZ, and quadruple A to quadruple, and those actually did, the last items didn't have anything, but it was a total of 1,596 pages. That was what I went through, spend a little bit of time doing that, and if someone else wants to double check it, I think it's, we can have who knows who do that. But thank you, Ted, and I just wanted to put that in there, seeing as I was dying to do it anyway, right? I did the work. I want the credit. No, I'm joking.
Yes.
Thank you.
And add that that doesn't equate to the kind of evidence that we need. It just shows that we have the public supportive. We still have to find evidence in the record to support it.
Right. I suppose that's another task. It's one of the reasons I'd like to let some other people go. I keep talking and continuing, but Ms. Chantrell, do you have anything to say?
I guess I would like to note from the record is that the water quality data that was submitted is showing that 100 feet is not working. I have not seen any evidence to show that 100 feet does work. Our water quality is declining in town. So based on what has been submitted into the record, an increase is warranted, and we have several, even our own Town Conservation Commission is in support of an increase. So I believe that the evidence is there to warrant an increase.
All right. I mean, I guess before I go to Mr. Schmidt, the good news is I don't think that anyone disagrees that an increase is needed, right? I mean, that's good news. It seems everyone's saying we should do something. Mr. Schmidt, if you would, sir.
I'm not convinced that 500 feet is a magic number. I won't deny that the possibility exists that we should increase it to a certain extent, but I think that 500 feet would invite a lot of litigation, and there are some people who say they don't care about that, but I do, because as the taxpayer we have to consider that. And is it the development that has caused a decline in our water quality, or is it because the wells that we've drilled have found that high iron and manganese content in the water has always been there? I could support some kind of an increase, but I do think that 500 feet is a bit restrictive and almost confiscatory in terms of personal property. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Moving on to Mr. Koch.
Thank you. Yes, I agree that the Sorry, am I muted? No. I agree that 100 feet isn't good enough. I agree with Mr. Schmidt that 500 feet is too much. I think if you look at, which I've done, the regulations of other Connecticut towns, the only time that you see 500 feet is, by my reading of the record, a protection of one particular bog in one particular town. So that's a specific reason. I would propose that we make it 300 feet. And I think that the evidence that supports that is in the form of a memorandum from the East Lyme Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources to us, in which it's June 8th, 2020, they propose that it be extended to at least 300 feet. And they put their reasons why. And there's also in our record, it is in the exhibits, in the first bunch of exhibits, it is that body's Protecting Drinking Water in East Lyme by the Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources, signed by several people. And it goes into a lot of, it has a summary, it has scientific citations, it has lots of information. So I had initially wanted us to look into protecting the specific aquifers in town and how this would affect that, but the commission voted that down. So in the absence of having that information, I think it's nonetheless reasonable to expand our upland review area to 300 feet. I agree with Mr. Schmidt that 500 feet invites litigation, and I don't see how, if I'm a judge looking at that in the Superior Court and I'm comparing it to the regulations of similar towns, it strikes me as being disproportionate. And I think that it risks wasting the town a lot of money and a potential loss, and it could potentially backfire to our purpose. And I think that 300 feet is reasonably related to our purpose. And I agree with Ms. Chantrell that 100 feet has not served. So that's what I would propose.
I have one comment.
Rosemary, can I put in the record real quick?
Yes.
The research that Mr. Koch is referring to, June 4th, 2020, was signed by Mr. Art Carlson.
Yes.
If I just may read a little bit about that research, and then I absolutely want to put a pin in what
has to do with that research, and I would like to preface it with that.
Okay. We recommend, quote, we recommend that the review area be extended to at least 300 feet to facilitate expert and nonpartisan review of the IWA of development projects that have the potential to degrade town wetlands, surface water bodies, or underground drinking water aquifers. I just want to highlight that it says to at least. I know that upon my own personal conversations with Mr. Carlson, I have spoken to him, and what seemed to have been a perhaps hasty response to our request for information, he has made it clear to me, this is all hearsay at this point, right, from a legal standpoint, but he's made it clear to me that he trusts our opinion and that they are rubber stamping, get us to 300, but we are totally into more. Go ahead, Rosemary, I'm sorry.
I just want to be clear. I know that at times we've talked about surface water and wetlands and also drinking water and the aquifers. And there has been a little bit of question about, talking about aquifers and that we might not have jurisdiction over that. So I would like to just bring into the picture, it's called Groundwater and Surface Water, a single resource, which was from the U.S. Geological Survey Circular 1139 from 1998. And
I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting. Is this something that's in the record?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Rosemary, could you clarify what item it is in the record for Attorney Zamarka?
Yep, hold on, I'm finding it.
Just again, so the record's clear that we do have a piece that is supporting, where it seems that she's going in that direction.
It is Exhibit USGS 1998 groundwater and surface water. I just think that it's really important that in the record, it's clearly stated that our surface water and groundwater are inextricably linked. Because there has been discussion about both, and yeah, go ahead.
Rosemary, is it 3Us?
3Us.
Thank you. So item number UUU. Go ahead with your, please help us understand what's in there.
Well, one thing that Zamarka has brought up is that we don't have the ability to weigh in on aquifer protection. And there's a document from the U.S. Geological Survey which states that our groundwater and our surface water systems are interconnected. And I just want that to be very clear that that is part of our decision.
Well, Rosemary, at this point, we're not making any distinctions. We're just saying 300 feet across the board, or that I'm proposing 300 feet across the board.
No, I understand. Right, but people have, yes, and people have referenced the drinking water study, and it is surface water and drinking water. It's both. We're not just talking about the aquifers alone.
So you're saying from an evidentiary standpoint, you want to make sure that people understand how they're interlinked.
Yes.
Okay, and that document supports that.
Yes. Thank
So
you.
not all of us
Thank
are
you,
hydraulic.
thank you for making that clear. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Right, give me the G-rated version, because I'm not. You're the hydraulic.
That's it. I mean, that's it. They're interconnected. They're inseparable. Surface water and groundwater.
And you're saying that when it's looked at in pieces, that we're really just perhaps the evidence is being misunderstood when someone's saying one doesn't have anything to do with the other.
Yes, because yes.
Does that mean that the 300, let's say upon Ted's sketch, 300 foot for a surface water, would one have a, would 300?
I don't want to have any opinions on that because that's not in the record. And so I am just saying, look at that document.
Got it. And thanks for keeping us on track. Mr. Koch, do you have anything else you'd like to add, sir?
I agree with Ted, so thank you.
No, not now.
All right. Moving over to Mr. Whoa, everything moved. Where did he go? Okay. Mr. Fimminster. You're muted. Let's get you unmuted real quick.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Lovely.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the bad opening for myself this evening. So I'm a little concerned with the 500 review area, only in that it doesn't really sync in line with the laws that are currently being supported for these rules, right? So we're really worried about how we're going to get supported to do this stuff. So by doing this, we're kind of going against our own kind of job qualifications or whatever. But I understand we got some bright and talented people here. But I'm just kind of concerned about how we're going to push this forward without the legal support. And also how we're going to enforce these rules. If we'd even do 300 feet, how we're going to make those other people pay for other people's soil scientists and things like that. Because we got to think about this stuff, don't we, when we're doing this stuff? If we're going to go this far. You know, I'm looking at other stuff we could have done besides just 100 foot. We could have done rules for vegetative buffers. We could have done stuff for slope. We haven't done any of that stuff. And that's all supported in the current standards for how to keep our water safe and clean. And I'm actually for, you know, I read about the town that did it for the bog. I think, you know, for our undeveloped areas, we could go, you want to go 500 feet on that? Sure. We want to keep that stuff a bog forever. We want to keep that open land. We can make that happen with a 500-foot buffer. But maybe in only those areas where it's not going to impact residents, that's going to make everybody upset and hurt a lot of feelings. And then in the end, maybe is it really protecting anything if people can do other stuff elsewhere? And we're all at the bottom of it anyway. That's where we are. I'm 5 miles from it. I'm in Latimer Brooks right in my backyard. If the developers had put in the sewers they should have done back then, I wouldn't be flooding the 5 times I have been flooded here. But nobody thought to do that back then. But we got to keep in line with the law, because if we go outside of this, it's going to be tough. And I like to do my job better. I like to do it well. Mr. Upton, I looked at your study. I mean, you know, you kind of said I was delaying this hearing because of it, but I really did read it. And in conclusion, the study said, yes, this stuff is bad, but the water dilutes it all. It didn't have an impact on the environment. In conclusion, that's what it said. I read it. That was your evidence.
Which one of the studies? I put like 15 in.
It was the Chinese one.
Yeah, the Chinese one. Yeah. Got it.
Well, that was the one I thought I should look at. That was the one I thought you put in. I didn't know about the 15 others. I looked at what I thought was yours.
My understanding was, yes, at the 1,600-foot distance that they explained, that was certainly the pollutants at 1,600 feet.
I know, dude, but I'm just saying, we need strong stuff. We need solid evidence. We need stuff. I mean, Rosemary, you brought some really good stuff to the table, man. And we can do this. We can do this better. But I just want to do like an overreach of 500 feet and make it better that way, because I don't think it's going to work that way. We're going to get our asses sued.
Did we lose somebody, guys? Who just disappeared? Sorry. No, we're good. There he is. Sorry, Don.
I just think we could do this a little bit better than just, I mean, I want to protect our waterways. I don't want to have anything in our water. And my kids are here. My grandkids are going to be here. You know, I want this to be a good place for everybody. But I'm just concerned that we're doing too far in one direction and didn't think about everything else.
May I tease out where you're at so far, Don?
Well, I'm not just saying let's do 500 feet. It doesn't
Right.
seem right.
I mean, going back in the time we've been here and the time prior to all of us being here, there's been quite a history of changing these regs, right? And
Sure.
we certainly, it was my push, I will say, to like, this seems to have been the hot button item, this upland review area, right? And there were all these pieces and all these little bits and bobs, and we certainly moved through focusing our efforts on one piece. And there were, like from Ms. Berger, some pieces that we said, I mean, I know there's a million things we're concerned about, definitions, and I would keep saying, this is not a plan, in my opinion, for us to simply put 500 feet in there and just go about our jobs. But do we spend the next 10 years putting through this basically rewriting of what is the Constitution of inland wetland protection by delaying the whole thing for the construct of writing everything? So I don't disagree that on its face value, 500 is a bit of a whoa, right? Clearly. Do we buttress that with systems and ways? I think that's our task. So we would be poorly served if we just throw up five. And I have a great piece of input to put in when everyone's done going, and I think it's going to rest a lot of people at ease. Mr. Finmister, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I do understand where you're going. You know, what do you get? What else do you got?
I don't know, man. I lost my train of thought, but thanks. Crap.
You were saying we could do this better.
Yeah, we could.
That was what you were saying. You were really saying, hey, we could do this better, and
I mean, even our experts who testified, they mentioned stuff about soap and they didn't get into it. But does anybody know why soap's important for this? I had to learn about all this stuff because of what we're doing here, you know?
Right.
So, just saying, it's all in our regulations, all supported legally. We could do all of that.
Well, we are the people who are supposed to put forth the ideas of what to do. Like, do you have specific ideas? Because we've been talking about this for months.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you have like proposals about slope and other things, then
yeah, there's industry standards, man. There's, I mean, from all the research I've seen, there are numbers out there we could like put out there. You know, like we did 500. If you want,
could you put them out there?
Yeah, I can give you some. But I mean, some of this data, this is now from, I mean, this is not like anything official, okay?
But wait, is this in the record? Sorry. Or is it okay to put it in if it's not in the record?
Study on the CAWS 7th annual meeting, February 25th, 2003.
Is it in the record? Is it in the record?
I don't know.
All right, let's be careful.
If it's not on the record, we can't discuss it.
Okay.
And if it is, we want to discuss it, Don. I'm not trying to stop you.
No, it's okay, man. It could be in the stuff Rosemary had. She had a ton of crap in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I've went through all of it. it is a lot.
I think if I bridge the gap between what we've been talking about, we kind of all inherited this regulations change that had an incredible amount of detail to it. And as a board led by Mr. Upton, we decided that as a matter of like kind of notice to the public about what they're going to be up against, and as a matter of just simplification of public policy, we decided to just expand the upland review area to a certain level. I initially moved to make it 200 feet, then it became 500. And I think that although it certainly would be, something that a board can do to make these little narrowly tailored rules for certain geological features and whatnot, we just decided that it would be better serving to the public so that they could just kind of get a better sense of what we're regulating. Yes, about slope, about natural features and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's why we did that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that that's an important thing by expanding the upland review, that enables us to look more at things like slope and, maybe other soil types, vegetation, like that enables us to explore that more by expanding the upland review. So like, I completely agree with you, Don, we do want to take those things into account, and by expanding the upland review, we will be able to do
Remember, on that note, remember the lady, I forget her name, that was the inland wetland activist for the state of Connecticut. What was her name? She said that, considering. Thank you. She had said considering, and she gave us an example of like a mile that was required because of the slope in this particular space, right? And because of the type of ground that was there. So I think that was back to what Don's saying. I mean, we're teasing out what Don's saying. I mean, it's yes, on face value, whoa. And then it's like, well, the idea was not to have all of these really complicated things that made the layman go, what? And then we're going to sit here and argue about percentage of gradient and so on and so forth. I saw Mr. Schmidt had something to say. The chair recognizes Mr. Schmidt. Yes, sir. You're muted, though.
Part of my reason for my initial comments were on page 8 in section 2.1. On the second page, it says the agency may rule that any other activity located within such upland review area or in any other non-wetland or non-watercourse area is likely to impact or affect wetlands or watercourses is a regulated activity. We can go as far as we want under our current regulations.
Right, Dave, we've kind of discussed that, though. That's that God clause, right?
Well,
so the problem is it requires policing and then prosecution as opposed to prevention.
No,
right?
I don't see it that way.
I can give you examples, and I don't want to on the record because it seems like I'd be pointing at people. There are a lot of examples. I think we did just I'm not disagreeing with you. We kind of already went through that though. It's the God clause, right? We can basically say to any development anywhere we want, hey, that's not cool. We want to know how we feel that you could be. There's a likelihood of pollution to the inland, whatever impact on the wetland, and thus we want to see you in front of our commission.
Yes.
I agree. That's what it says. That's not what the burden is on us to then go around and police and prosecute as opposed to protect.
No, but does not every application that comes in that would require a review in front of our commission initially go through Mr. Gaishel, the town, and eventually it's going to wind up in front of us. But if it's decided that there could or might possibly be any intrusion or I'm not a great spokesperson, but we have the ability to extend that review area as far as we wish under today's current application of the regulations.
So are you saying,
If I can, can I say something? It seems to me that the difference.
could I finish my question though real quick? Sorry. Are you saying you want to be able to, you would like to be able to, Dave, you would like to be able to see each, just a glance over of each application?
Well, Mr. Upton, Mr. Gaisha, would you correct me if I'm wrong, but does not every application come in front of you for initial review?
Just about. Usually if there's a zoning application, there'll be a referral. I would review that application. If they were regulated activities, they would either need to be permitted or referred to this commission for permitting. In the example of a single family house, a shed, a pool, obviously we can issue that administratively. Larger developments, kind of like the one, just a larger development where there may be more activity in the upland review area, we would kick off to the agency. So I think while the regulation and the definition allows us to expand the upland review area using some discretion, I think what I'm hearing is that the intent would be to define an area so it's a little more clear as to what that threshold is. Otherwise, if in the instance I issue a permit administratively, or I say there's no permit required because the development was well over 100 feet, then the applicant would not necessarily come before the commission for any further determination. And then they would go forward in front of the zoning commission and get their zoning permit. In those cases, that development could be within the 200-300 feet and it never came before the commission. Although I did review it, I would probably comment back to zoning about erosion, sedimentation controls, et cetera. Those are standards in the industry. So, but I think that really is the crux of the matter.
Right. Mr. Koch, I'm sorry, I did not mean to cut you off. I was just trying to make sure we got Mr. Schmidt's concept flushed out and understood.
It's okay. I think Mr. Gaishel made my point better than I was going to.
So, moving through, is anyone, I mean, it seems we're all taking second times at it. Is there other stuff that anyone has that's jumping out at them to discuss?
I think climate and drought are an important thing to consider.
As general
And
knowledge?
which is in the record.
And common knowledge,
Yeah.
which can be considered outside of the public record, just so that you know.
So, yeah, just for example, looking at the record, exhibit ZZZ, B, 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 C, 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 and D, 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 D. So just factoring in impacts of climate on water availability and droughts. And how, if there is, in just another paper, exhibit VVV, how climate change and can essentially negatively impact water quality. In addition to what's already being experienced in our town.
Rosemary, are you saying that now that climate change is increasing, it puts a stress on our local waters so that we should have a more stringent review in the upland review area?
Mr. Koch, just say your name for the record in case someone has to read this.
Ted Koch.
I don't know, I'm worried about like giving my opinion again, so I would, just because I can't do that, so I just steer back to the record, just showing that, yeah, it's IPCC report, and there are several times in that report where it does state that climate can negatively impact climate change can negatively impact water quality. Is
Right,
that
because
your question?
well, because I'm concerned that I think, as Mr. Zamarka said at one point, we can't be like the little environmental protection agency. So we can't be trying to like prevent climate change with our regulations.
No, we're not. But I think that if we're considering the impacts that climate change is going to have on our water supply and our water quality, then that's something that factors into whether or not we'd want to increase our upland review.
So if our water supply is more stressed, or is more stressed than it was when 100 feet was considered the right standard, then we can maybe increase it in response to changing conditions.
I think that would make sense to think about that.
May I, pardon, you guys are having a great talk. Ted, and you had just mentioned, Mr. Koch, you had just mentioned a line about not being an environmental protection agency. Could you, I wanted to clarify from the record something on that subject. Could you clarify what you're saying?
I mean, it's pretty simple. We're a wetlands agency. We have we can't have mission creep. We have to stick to our
So in the regulations is something sent that Mr. Gaishel put on the Yukon listserv as a question about, he had submitted the question, which was specifically, Mr. Gaishel's writing was, hello all. The town of East Lyme is in the process of reviewing a proposed regulation change to their inland wetland and watercourses regulations, which contemplates a 500-foot upland review area. I'm looking to see if there are any towns in Connecticut with upland review areas greater than 100 feet, and if so, what is the rationale, if any, behind increasing it? Mr. Gaishel, that was something you sent on, it looks like, June 24th, early on in our process, right?
Correct.
So there was a response from CT planning professionals who cited DEEP's regulations, and they cited a section which I found, I highlighted this, Ted, earlier because it contradicted to me what you were saying and what I thought too. And it's their understanding from this firm was the IWWA is first and foremost an environmental conservation and protection statute. Remember, municipal inland wetlands agencies do not regulate wetlands or watercourses. They regulate activities likely to impact or affect such resources. And I took that. I thought it was kind of interesting. It brought me back the other direction, which was, you guys aren't a mini EPA. Does that make sense to what you just said? I know that was a long response, but it's just something I saw on the record reading over like lots and lots and lots of words. And I said, hey, that's an interesting fact.
Yeah, well, I mean, just because it's an environmental protection statute doesn't make us an environmental protection agency.
Agreed. Right. But to uphold what is essentially a protection statute for activities that might impact it.
I mean, my point was we regulate activities, right? And we're just trying to have, when somebody files an application, we want to know what the border of the upland review area is so that we can have a look at it, right? And so, like, to what Mr. Gaishel and Schmidt were talking about, I like, when people come before the board and I look at their maps, what they do is they map out where the wetlands are and then where 100 feet from that is. In order for me to surmise that maybe they're having an impact on something beyond the 100 feet, I have nothing to go on. I have no idea. But if our upland review area is larger, then they'll have to draw that out for us, and I will have an idea. But
Right.
none of that means that we can regulate more than what we're authorized by statute to regulate. And anything beyond what we're authorized to regulate isn't a good enough reason for us to expand our upland review area. That's why I think that the recommendation of 300 feet that I talked about earlier by that collection of professionals is, that guides me.
But the God clause, in fact, says it could be any number of feet.
Yeah, but it has to be reasonable. I can't just look at a map and see, somebody's building a house, they're putting in a septic tank, and I say, I wonder if 250 feet downslope from that, if it is downslope, there's a salamander, and I want to, I just can't make that stuff up. That's why we increase the upland review area, right? So that we just get more information. So it's a little bit more of a burden on people who want to develop properties, but we've already placed quite a substantial burden on our town's waters, and we should try and alleviate with our regulations. That's the whole point of this.
What would you guys think about, as I listen to Mr. Koch, what about a concept of an increase, and I'm throwing it against the wall to see if it sticks. What about a concept of an increase in the review area to 300 feet, but with a workshopping of any activity within 500? Meaning, I'm just throwing it together as I'm saying it. Mr. Gaishel has an application, it's a shed, and we still get to see and say at each of our meetings, maybe we'd have to create efficiency, but we'd say, nope, we don't need to see that, we don't need to see that. Commercial activity with this and that and so on and so forth, with underground storage tanks, so on and so forth. That's within 500 feet. We want to take a look at that. So does that make sense? I'm just making that up as I go. Is that, Phyllis, I can't hear you, Phyllis. Can you unmute, Phyllis, Jen?
You're still muted.
How's that?
Thank you. Good.
Go ahead, Phyllis.
I think you're adding too many variables to it, and that's the whole thing that we were trying to get away from. I mean, just pick a number. And okay. I think that's what we're going to do. We also, and I don't know if it was part of the record from before, how long the town has had that 100-foot rule. Was it in the 90s where it became a rule? We're looking at maybe 20 years and looking at the population of the town and how it's changed, probably at least doubled.
That's a good point.
So you're for simplicity. And I'm sorry, I was just coming around to Ted a little bit there. Sorry, Ted, no offense. I was
you like, come around to me. You come around.
All right. So any other thoughts here? Phyllis, I didn't mean to cut you off. Is there more to that?
No, but you mentioned something about the God rule. So the God rule is where we have 100 feet, but we can go technically beyond that. Is that correct?
Yes.
I've been on the board for probably over 10 years. I've never, ever seen that used.
Right.
That God rule.
That's an important thing to just recognize. I'm glad that you said that based on your experience, because I think that speaks to why looking at a greater area is something we should consider. So.
Well, I mean, think if like I said, I think it's policing and protection. Now we've got to send like Mr. Gaishel out to some person that's already doing something. And then all of us have to be really, really, really bad guys and say, hey, you got to stop. We don't like what you're doing or how you're doing it. And very few people want to put themselves in that uncomfortable spot. I've seen very few people that I've ever ran into that want to be that guy. People are like, right? I mean, I think for that reason, it supports that, you've not seen it play out for 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw activities that I was concerned about at Triumph when the Triumph building transferred from Triumph's to ABC Company. They're over there, they're digging, they removed all this dirt. There was like an EPA cleanup thing. They had all kind of oil in the ground.
We didn't even see an application for any of that, did we?
Well, and I called Mr. Mulholland. I said, what's going on? I talked to Gary, and it was like, well, it was already existing, and they're redoing it, and da-da-da-da-da. And, it's like that kind of stuff. Like, what are we going to go over there and stick a red sticker on it and say stop? And, it's rarely does that methodology seem, it's policing and prosecution as opposed to prevention, right? Seems hard to do. I'm completely agreeing with you.
It sounds like our committee is relatively on the same page about a potential expansion. Is that correct, based on what I've been hearing for the past, I don't know, 45 minutes?
I think it seems I mean, everyone has said on the record that they agree to an increase.
Okay.
There's no denying that. Every single commission member has said, I agree we should increase the review area, right? Does anyone else have anything else before I make a little closing argument here? So, Mr. Daigle, did you want to say something, or?
No, I'm biting my tongue.
Okay.
I'll let you make your closing statement.
Okay, so I have my personal opinions. I have my personal interpretation of the record. That is everybody's job. It is your job to understand and interpret each individual piece of evidence and balance it out. To listen to the attorneys that might be for development of their clients, or to listen to the Shanghai water pollution concepts, and then the attenuation of the certain benzene at 1,600 feet. And to listen to our resident hydrologist, and to listen to our resident attorney that is saying, hey, I'm looking out for our interest, and actually doing something that sticks. And I think the sensibility that Mr. Schmidt brings, and the engineering element and application of Ms. Chantrell, and the time that Phyllis has been here that none of us can even begin to speak to because we're relatively wet behind the ears and new. Don, I think Don brings an intelligent sensibility to, like, let's just do a good job. For me, my interpretation is what it is, and each person's individual interpretation weighs into what they're doing. And we have to remember what Attorney Zamarka, really just charged us with. I feel that we could make a motion. We could instruct our town staff. And Gary is a friend, and I respect him. I think he's a great professional, and I think he does a great job. I think he does a lot of damn work, and the same goes for Jen. Because my best of friends disagree with me, and we can still be friends, we know that our town's agent doesn't agree with this plan that we put forth. That's okay. And that's been said on the record, and that's okay. I still like the guy. I love the guy. I would personally recommend to the commission that we would acquire and find our own third-party attorney to review the documentation and the regulation, the record, and everything that we've done. We would go through a selection process. I think it speaks to, I've made a lot of notes, and this is really what I've thought about, is doing this right, like Ted says, to do it right, and like Don says, to do it right. We need the legal support, and we don't want the costly litigation that Mr. Schmidt said. I feel that we should find an attorney that operates in this space, that is a third party, that this commission would select, and that we would have them put to task to really come up with an opinion, not an opinion, but a factual statement as to what the record tells us, so that we could see it in black and white on paper. And I know that we are fully entitled to do so. And that would be my personal, I will make the motion. I would motion that, if I may, Sue, as the chair, Gary Upton, I would motion that the commission hire a third-party, environmentally experienced attorney or legal team to review all of our documentation and the record, and to give us a statement as to their opinion on what we've done and discussed so far.
Do you mean that, sorry, do you mean that they would draft the resolution for us? Because I mean, that's like the end game of all of this, is drafting the resolution. Is that correct? Ted, would you, sorry, I know you're the lawyer in our committee, so I just want to, is that?
This is a new idea to me, and I don't know where Gary's going with it, so I just want to hear the rest of it.
Sure.
I think I want third-party legal to look over this. I understand we do, and this is no insult to Mr. Zamarka. That is his job to represent this commission, but I know it's within our right to have another set of eyes that have nothing to do with internal, to review this. and come up with, I suppose, Rosemary, that would be a direction we could take. We could say, Sue, I'm not motioning still. But we could take the direction to say, to give us potentially two, directions to go and vote with. But yeah, I mean, I'd like some good solid legal to dig into what we've done here and give us a nice succinct statement. And I did see Mr. Daigle had something to say.
Yeah, just a question. Are you asking for the third party to draft your motion, or are you asking for the third party to give you an opinion on the evidence?
I think that personally, I'm throwing it out there as it's happening. I'm asking for a third party to give us an opinion on the evidence.
Okay. Would that be information that's outside the public hearing that's closed?
No, I would want them to draw.
I'm asking Mr. Attorney Zamir, if you get a third party to give you interpretation of what's been presented in public, would that be considered new evidence?
I imagine it would fall under a report from staff, although I think you're getting into somewhat of a gray area because you're sort of asking an attorney, myself, anybody else, essentially to do your job and to, it's this agency's job to decide how much, if any, to increase the upland review area based on the evidence in the record.
So
the substantive call is the commission's charge. Any attorney would be advising you as to law and procedure.
Understood. And Ted, the reason you said, geez, this is a new thing I'm coming up with, I went through 1,500 pages over the past 6 weeks. And I'm going like, wow, like you get the fors and against and the evidence that it's in this murky area. And then you get, I
think I might be able to help you all out. So based on what Ted said earlier about the 300 feet.
Mr. Gaishel, just say your name. So in case someone has to read this, Mr. Gaishel.
Gary Gaishel, agent for the agency. Based on what Ted was saying about the exhibits in the record and the 300 feet, I mean, unlike any other, just like any other application, there's your evidence in the record that sounds like you're hanging everything on. Mm-hmm. The question is, once you make that motion and it goes forward, you'll need to start thinking about an effective date. And then we can start worrying about how we actually implement an increased upland review area if that's the case. But based on the record and the discussion, I think the only thing in there that's really supporting this is the letter from the Conservation Commission, exhibits, exhibit Z, it was the ones Rosemary referred to, exhibit ZZZ, BBB, CCC. And the other exhibit, and I missed it, it was the 1998 groundwater and surface water.
It's I mean, the ones that we've been discussing are UUU through DDDD. Those are all ones that have come up in discussion during our discussion right now.
So I would say those exhibits, in addition to the natural resources exhibits, all support your decision.
But there are many more. I mean, Kristen put in some information from the Army Corps of Engineers.
If you want to reference them, you can. If you feel that further strengthens your position, then by all means, we would probably have to go through and dig that out. And this is where I think Mr. Zamarka was saying staff was draft the resolution, is we would comb through this record and try to pull all of that out. But I'd be more than happy to not do it and just look at the few exhibits that we know support it. I mean, whatever this commission wants to do.
Well, the important thing would be the resolution. Is that correct? So if hypothetically someone were to challenge this, is that what a judge would look at? Or are they going to, I just want to understand, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, you want the motion to read.
Have a motion.
Right, guys, just be careful. We're getting really messy if someone has to. And I'm guessing judges aren't going to sit and watch the Zoom. They're going to listen to a script. So we just had Mr. Gaishel speaking, and then Rosemary Ostfeld was speaking, and then Sue Spang, sorry, just said, do we have a motion?
We still have a motion. There's a motion that hasn't been seconded yet.
I didn't realize there was a motion.
I didn't either.
I thought Gary had made a motion to hire an attorney.
I did make a motion to hire a third-party attorney to comb over exactly what we're talking about. Someone that is accredited and highly acclaimed in the field, that has experience in matters like this, that we would probably have to take a little time to figure out who we'd want to use. That was the motion that I was making.
Yeah.
Do I hear a second? It's okay. I won't be offended if I don't. Going in 3, 2, the motion fails. All right. So there we have it. So it seems from a sensibility standpoint, everyone's saying, no, we don't need to do that. We can kind of do a lot of this ourselves.
Daigle's got a question.
Daigle, yes, sir.
Can I make a recommendation?
Please, sir.
Some of you have brought forward some evidence, articles of evidence that support a change. You've mentioned 300 feet. The proposal's 500 feet. If you all as individual agency members went back and poured through the evidence to identify what has been submitted to justify an increase, and individually think what you feel comfortable with that increase to be, and come back to the table and say, these things, these items support an increase as submitted in the record. Then you can, or you can do it tonight if you want, narrow down or see if you can get consensus for one distance, vice the other. You may not be able to. You may have to go through 2 or 3 motions. Someone may motion 500 and it may not pass. Someone may do 300 or 200 and it may not pass. But each of you individually, I think, can bring the evidence that have been submitted to the record to the table to support an increase. And then you can decide what distance you want to increase it to. You can do all that tonight, or you can do some of it tonight and go back. You know, Rosemary brought some things, some other folks did, but the more pieces of evidence that you identify and you put in, give to Gary to put into the motion to support the change, the better chance of having the change stand up in a court of law you have that chance to do.
Before Rosemary goes, the only thing I would say, I agree. I guess I just want to say, guys, that's what we're here to do. And that's why I put the work in to go over all the documents that I did before we showed up. And if we keep showing up, no offense, but if we keep showing up and you guys don't do that, we're going to keep doing exactly this.
Then go ahead through and list what has been submitted as a justification so Gary can record them and draft a motion based on these pieces of evidence. I've heard a couple tonight. If it's only going to be the 4 or 5 that have been mentioned, that's fine. If you think there's 10 or 12, get the 10 or 12 on the table to the evidence, whatever the number is.
It speaks to, like you were saying, Don, I guess this was, I'm thinking about, you know, I got what you said and I feel what you say, and I think you're totally right. And I'm totally acknowledging you're ready to go, Rosemary. I just feel like I'm not a scientist. And while I would love to put my life on pause and spend the next 6 months knocking your socks off with the most amazing paper that has amazing support evidence for this thing, I can't do that. I got to review and I got to go on a flavor and I got to understand and I need to read things and I need to say, yeah, that's for, that's against, and I got to graze over this whole record. So I don't disagree, but I am not a scientist. That's not what I'm here to do. I have to go, you know, with a team of opinions, and there's no question what we're doing is not comfortable. You know, let's leave it at 100. No one's going to argue with us there, right? Go ahead, Rosemary. Go ahead.
I just have a question. Can we see a draft resolution from one of the, from the case, I think it's like Queech or something, where it actually was upheld in court? Can we see what that resolution looks like? I mean, I am not a lawyer. I am a scientist, but I'm not a lawyer. So I want to understand what like a resolution would look like that is, I guess, substantive enough.
That's part of why I would get a third-party attorney to do that work.
I don't know. Ted, do you have any comments on that? I don't know.
I certainly don't need a third-party attorney. I don't know who would pay for that, how much it would cost. It's not about really so much a legal analysis at this point. We've been informed what the law is. We have to find out.
It is done in other towns, and it came suggested from someone who's been well watching our situation, who comes from a very experienced standpoint. They said, hey, this is what I would do if I were in your situation.
Well, I didn't hear that from them myself in any of the meetings. So what I think is that with what Mr. Daigle said, we should try and find a consensus about how much we're going to expand this thing. And we should say why. So my proposal would be 300 feet. And I think it's a matter of the quality of exhibits and not so much a matter of the quantity. I think that exhibit CCC, which I've already talked about, if we can't trust our own Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources writing about protecting drinking water in East Lyme, I don't know who we can trust. They recommend 300 feet in their letter. I think that's solid. I think that balances the concerns of overreach by people who don't like 500 feet with the concerns of the majority of citizens who want it to be more than 100 feet. I propose that we find a consensus around 300 feet.
Mr. Koch, would you consider a motion?
A what?
Would you consider a motion?
Well, let's see where we're at first.
I think with the discussion for a discussion and a motion would find that out really quick.
I think we can go around.
I would perhaps second that type of motion.
All right. What were you saying, Rosemary?
I support what you just said.
Okay.
That's all I have to say. I will support a motion or discussion.
So I move that we have town staff propose a resolution that involves the increase of our upland review area from 100 feet to 300 feet. And based on that motion, I cite to exhibit CCC and the letter.
Let's Sue catch up.
Hold on.
And is that the end of the motion, Ted, or are you continuing?
That's the motion. I was going to cite my evidence supporting it, but
let her catch it real quick.
Let's
Yeah,
hear what
to direct town staff to propose a resolution to increase the URA from 100 feet to 300 feet.
Okay, we can stop there. That's the motion.
And using the entirety of the record and all the things that Mr. Gaishel can find to do so, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Great.
I
second.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I might suggest rather than voting on this tonight, because technically there's nothing to vote on, we don't have a resolution, I would suggest you direct staff to draft a resolution along the lines suggested by Mr. Koch.
I think Ted motioned.
He motioned and I seconded.
The direct town staff.
Motion stands. So I'm going to, there is the motion. Is there any further discussion?
So is the motion based on the 300 feet?
Yes. Ted is moving to have town staff draft a motion to support 300
Resolution. Yes.
resolution. So from the top down, I'm going to take a vote. If anyone else has anything to say, Ms. Berger.
Wait,
Yes.
pose a question.
Hold on, Ms. Berger, yes. I'm in favor myself. Rosemary, you seconded the motion,
Oh,
right?
yes, aye.
Ms. Chantrell,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Fimminster.
No.
A no for Mr. Fimminster. And lastly, Mr. Kutch, it was your motion.
Yes.
So we have, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor, 1 opposed to having town to draft a motion to support the increase of our upland review to 300 feet, or resolution, sorry if I stated that correctly. And Sue, you're clear on the motion, right?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Now that the motion is, it's moved, it's passed, Mr. Daigle, what do you have to say, sir?
You, as members of the agency, going to totally rely on Gary to search through the record to identify evidence that supports the proposed resolution, or are you going to, as members of the agency, assist in that identification so that your view is being represented, not just Mr. Goshel's?
I think I hear what you're saying. I suppose when we're approving a building, oftentimes I think Mr. Gaishel, an application for a development, Mr. Gaishel seems to understand the intent of what we're after. And we really don't get in the weeds helping him do so. But I understand this is a bit more complicated.
I think it's fine if we provide input, right? Is that something that's allowed? Is that fine? Because I feel like we do that on applications all the time. Like, we'll be like, oh, can we add this, right? Is it the same situation?
And
Yes?
it just avoids you adding them after the motion's been made on the resolution. Things that you believe support your view, if you provide them to Gary, he can get them into the resolution.
Well, I'll just say, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. It's Exhibit CCC, and it's the June 8th, 2020 letter from the CCNR to us. Those are the 2 main documents that I rely on.
From Mr. Art Carlson, yes. And then I would say, Ted, many of the other documents support an increase well beyond that, which thus would support their suggestion of 300 feet.
That's right. If those documents propose the entire pie, I'm taking a slice from within that pie.
Right. So it doesn't mean so I would say all of my documentation that I submitted supports 300 feet and then some.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to add to that one the U.S. Geological Survey, surface water and groundwater. That should go with that.
Build the best case you can.
Yep.
Based on what's
Yeah.
been submitted, not on opinions, not on public opinion, but what has been submitted. Facts. That's the best chance you have of having this being defensible in a court of law.
Attorney Zamarka, on what Mr. Daigle is saying, is it wise to make a sweeping, we believe the record supports such, or should we say because of this, which has more holes?
I think throughout the course of what's happened tonight, Mr. Koch has identified more than just the one Conservation Commission memo in the record that he believes supports the 300-foot. As I stated at the outset, what we normally do is if we reach a consensus, which it appears we have clearly tonight, then staff drafts a memo. There's been plenty of discussion tonight about evidence in the record that the commission feels supports or may not support a certain position. And so Gary and myself would then draft a resolution in line with the 300-foot that Mr. Koch suggested and what was voted on.
And then can we provide feedback on that and input?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that would be great. I think that's what Mr. Daigle was suggesting, and I think
Absolutely. That's the purpose. That's the purpose of discussing the resolution at the next.
Yeah, and I would encourage my scientist friends to look through the exhibits that they submitted for evidence that is corroborative of what the CCNR said. And
all exhibits, if they don't mind, because they're scientists after all.
Yeah. to specifically to that 300-foot number. I mean, it's the letter says the IWA upland review area should be extended to approximate the distance where runoff from major landscape disturbance will affect the health of any adjacent wetland or watercourse. It stands to reason that the conclusion from that would be that it's 300 feet, because they say 300 feet in the paragraph right before that.
Yeah.
Anything in our exhibits that shows what the approximate distance is from runoff from major landscape to adjacent wetlands or watercourses would be helpful, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If the English language didn't just fail me.
Oh, it does.
So I guess I feel like my question to Mr. Zamarka, no offense, is still not answered. Is a general statement in motion safer than one piggybacked off of pieces of data?
Well, ultimately what the agency will end up voting on is the resolution. That will be, you have directed staff to draft a resolution for a 300-foot upland review area. So what staff will do is go through as much evidence as is available in the record to support that. That will then be brought before the agency at the next meeting to discuss and perhaps alter, depending on how the resolution comes out and what the other members have to say about it.
So you're saying that would stand better the test of appeal than just to have a general.
Ultimately, it's going to be whether or not whatever decision comes down is supported by substantial evidence in the record. That's ultimately what it's going to come down to. That's what a court's going to do. A court's going to look at the reasons stated in the resolution and decide whether there is evidence in the record to support it.
Okay.
So a God statement of we believe there is evidence in the record to support the 300-foot upland review is that not catching that as it stands?
It's not great. It's not great.
Okay.
I would not recommend that at all.
That's what I was.
Helpful.
All right. That's all I was trying to ask. So you like it bullet pointed to death, so that it really. So Gary, you've got some work to do, and we're here to help you.
Great.
Kristen,
Can I task each of us that are for the 300 feet to look through at minimum what you yourselves submitted and provide information to Gary maybe the next week and a half to if there's something that we feel is very important to add to the resolution?
That's smart.
I agree with that. It's just difficult because I would say that all of the more I dug, and I'm not a scientist, the more I dug and went through MLS citations in works, I found stuff that supported much more than 300. So I would say everything I stuck in there is good. And I'm sorry to say that, Gary, but that's my response, all of it.
That's fine. That's your opinion.
Yeah. That is my
I support it. I don't know.
And the record is there. The record is going to be following this decision, so that information will be there. But if there's something specific that maybe we would like to be added into the resolution, if we could provide that to Gary in the next week or so.
I think is it all right, Mr. Attorney Zamarka, is it all right in the workshopping of this resolution if we don't get discussive, but if we could communicate in an email manner that is CCing the team?
I think it would be safer, again, given the scrutiny this is going to be under, to have staff draft the resolution and then discuss it in an open meeting at the next session.
Okay.
That's why I asked it that way. Sorry. So we'll all just assault Gary with lots of emails. Or we can go in person and that you're welcome that, right, Gary? As long as you have time, if we want to come in person and talk to you.
As of now, yes. Building's still open to the public. Wear your mask.
Yep.
Yes, we're available.
All right, cool.
Make an appointment would be best so we can set up time.
And I think
too many emails leaves too much open to FOI.
Yeah, that's a lot, right? I mean, I would just hate to have to do. I would not want your job with that right now. That's my thing.
The other thing I would caution, let's not forget that this agency is subject to FOI, and if we start sending emails amongst a number of people that could constitute a quorum, that could be considered an illegal meeting.
Right.
That's
Wait,
exactly what I was just trying to say.
Just to clarify, is it okay if we talk to Gary over Zoom? Or do we have to go in person? Like what?
Yeah, we can Zoom. We can't do it as a group and have a call.
Right. If like one person were to be like, I submitted this evidence, these are the things that I think should be incorporated into the resolution. Can we talk on Zoom rather than go down to town hall?
And to clarify,
You
three
can,
of us-
as I say, I err wholly on the side of caution, and my recommendation would be you've instructed staff to draft the resolution. We have a very good idea of what evidence is in the record that is said to be in support of that resolution. Let staff draft the resolution, and then we can flesh it out at the next meeting in an open meeting.
Got it.
I like that idea. I think it's let you guys do your for clarification for the agency, if three of us are talking to Mr. Gaishel, that is not a meeting, correct, Mr. Zamarka?
It would not be a quorum, but again, you don't want to skirt any lines.
Yep, just asking. And if two of us were having a phone call about the matters of tonight's meeting, would that be a problem?
No. But again, it's better not to discuss substance outside of the bounds of the meeting.
Understood. But then if we have a question to understand something, it's okay to talk to Mr. Gaishel?
Yeah.
What if one of our board members has an expert understanding of that can explain it to us better than Mr. Gaishel, in our opinion?
Again, it is better to discuss matters of substance at the open meeting.
Sure. But generally agencies are workshopping on the backside of things, right?
It's not a recommended practice.
Okay, understood. All right, so I feel like we've done a good job, guys. It's been quite the doozy of a thing. I think we could move on from this, our pending application for our upland review area. Is anyone in disagreement with me that we can let this thing go back to the team that has to work on it, Mr. Gaishel? I'm sure Jen Lindo will be in there pretty heavy working on that, and Mr. Attorney Zamarka, is that we're good? We're good to let it rip into them for a bit.
You've already made your decision.
So we have the pending application of the Christchurch Fellowship of Niantic is the next item, but we've already discussed that and made a decision on that, right, guys?
Yep.
On that matter, we didn't specify a specific date for a public hearing.
Sure.
So I would suggest we do that. That could be our next regular meeting. Again, the application was received during COVID, so we do have the 90 days. Correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Zamarka. I will note that our next regular scheduled meeting is November 9th. We have a big public hearing on November 10th for the POCD with the Planning Commission.
I don't think we should do it then. That's not fair to you guys.
So for Harvest Christian, I don't know, we can either move it to maybe the 16th of November, or I wouldn't want to put it ahead of Election Day, so.
Gary, can I ask you just a nuts and bolts question? They said they've been like waiting to do this for a long time, right? And they've been kind of like working on it, like a people question. Are they ready to break ground? Are they dying to break ground? Or it's like, how are they going to feel about if we make them wait a little bit?
When I last spoke to Joe Wren, he indicated that they're not in a rush. They waited this long. They're going to take all the steps as need be. And I think he understands the current situations and having to Zoom and, the difficulties around that, but we've managed to figure that out. So right. I don't think there's any issue with an additional week. It's not going to, we're still, once we open the public hearing, we have 35 days to conduct it. It's a matter of 7 days in that regard.
Understood.
Can I make a suggestion? And I'm just going to throw this out there, only because on the 9th is the date of our next regularly scheduled meeting. The 10th is the POCD planning public hearing, and the 11th is a holiday. So everything is going to be closed. Would the commission maybe rather meet the following week on November 16th?
So move our regular meeting to the 16th?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
November 16th. I'd like to make a motion to move our November regular meeting from November 9th to November 16th.
Sure.
I'll second.
I have a second. All in favor with a show of hands, please. We've got Phyllis, Gary, Rosemary, Kristen, Davis waving, Don, and Ted is over there. We're good. All right. Everyone is in favor of.
Thank you.
All right. Good idea, guys. So we're going to meet on November 16th.
Is that the public hearing as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And then at November 16th, we will hear staff's concept for this
Yep.
review stuff. Yeah, move on. Is everyone in agreement to move on? Item number 8, old business, none. Reports, chairman's report. I don't. Kristen, do you have your hand up or you just, no, you don't. Chairman's report. I don't have a written report, but I can tell you that touring the country is quite the mind-blowing event. I've gone more places than I can remember, and I'm just blown away at the things I saw. And I'm very charged with how important what we do protecting the water of our area. We are spoiled. There's no question. We are spoiled with a resource. We have no clue how strong and the existence of our resource here. You travel and see the methodology that they utilize to move water in California and Utah and Arizona and even the states you wouldn't expect, like Wyoming and places that are. It just was an absolutely mind-blowing trip, and it really kept coming back to like, wow, we really don't know what we have. So I'm proud that we're here working on protecting those resources, and I think we don't realize what's going on in the country, and I would implore everyone to take a trip and see the West Coast and drive there. It takes a long time, and you see a lot of stuff. So anyhow, Inland Wetlands Agent Report is the next item. Mr. Gaishel, do you have any administrative permits issued or commissioned issued permits that we need to talk about?
As far as permits that I'm reviewing, I haven't issued these yet, but they're on my desk. It's 164 Pennsylvania Avenue. There's a repair to an existing retaining wall along Dodge Pond. There's no work in the water, so they're looking to fix the cap there. I think that'll be relatively something easy I can issue. 20 Islanda Court, they're replacing decks. 20 Atlantic Street, they want to install a pool. 12 Latimer Drive, they're going to replace or add a deck. As far as items on the agenda that need some further discussion on enforcement, I'd like to note that at 301 Chesterfield Road, Aces High, we had approved some plantings in the buffer along Latimer Brook. Those plantings are thriving. I took a look at the permit. The permit required the area to be, there was a small meadow area that was to be mowed twice a year. That's being done. The grassed areas between the plantings further along, they're doing that twice a year as well. According to the plan, or at least what was said, the neighbor had indicated that that wasn't supposed to be happening. So I've advised Aces High not to mow between the plantings further along the stream, only the meadow area. So hopefully that'll rectify itself. And then the other item is 285 Boston Post Road, the Smith Pizzalia matter. I issued 2 cease and desist orders. And we had
297 Boston Post Road.
Pardon?
It was 297, not 285.
297 Boston Post Road. We were unable to hold show cause hearings for that matter. I guess since the commission had last walked the site and advised or directed me to reissue the order, since then, Mr. Pizzalia has gone in and has done further work to remove equipment and debris. So I have pictures of those. I have not been able to put a report together for you, but I certainly can. I'll be happy to do that. And if you'd like, you can certainly place it on your next site walk agenda. But I know Mr. Garrity is here tonight representing his client. I think the issue here is that according to the regulations, we're required to hold a show cause hearing within 10 days of the issuance of said order. And because that wasn't completed, we basically negated any due process for Mr. Pizzalia. Attorney Zamarka is here if need be.
I would agree. The requirement was that they have a hearing in 10 days. Both were canceled for reasons unbeknownst to us, and therefore we view the cease and desist as defective. That's not to say that we're trying to cooperate with Mr. Gaishel to make some corrections there.
And Mr. Doherty, understand how it appears. But Attorney Zamarka, do we have any softening of the regulated times because of COVID and the governor's orders regarding a cease and desist order?
I do not know of any executive orders that apply to this situation, no.
Okay. All right. Could you investigate that further for us, just in case?
Sure, but I do agree with Attorney Garrity that because the show causes were not held within the statutory 10 days, that we would need to start over if that was the course you wanted to take.
And I remember there was an order of a 90-day extension of all of these timelines that didn't apply to this.
It did not apply to all timelines. It applied to certain ones, but not every timeline, no.
Okay.
I should point out that your notices of the cease and desist said a hearing would be held within 10 days too. That's what my client received, so.
Understood. At the end of the day, we just want to make sure they're not polluting the water over there, right? I mean, we're people here, just like the church. We want to, if they want to build soon, we want to know if they want to build soon.
Right.
You know, our concern is what's going on. We can all play the game of the 10 days and all that stuff, and probably sounds like you can win that one, right? But this is someone that's in our town doing lots of developing. I think he wants to play by the rules, and I understand it's not his property, and there's a lot of history there. I please, fellow commissioners, stop me if I don't speak for anyone here. I think we just want to see it cleaned up.
And he's trying to do some of that stuff within the powers that he has on the property.
Sure. So I think it's wise, like Mr. Gaishel suggested, that we revisit in time. As you know, we'll just keep an eye on this thing, right?
Well, I mean, I periodically drive by at Route 1. I think most of you travel Route 1. It's not like it's invisible. So that said, you know, like anything else, we have the ability to enforce when needed. I will prepare a report for you for your next at the meeting on the 16th, and we can go from there.
Are we legally allowed to just drive in there and walk through and look at it on our own?
Negative.
Why don't we, do you want to add it then back to the site walk like we did last time?
Yeah. Or Dave, you have to park next door and use your drone. We
I
can't
don't have a drone.
It's not regulated airspace.
I don't have the technology to use a drone.
All right. I know a guy. All right.
I don't want to do that. So.
All right. So, yeah, you want, Rosemary, you're suggesting we put it on the next site walk agenda?
Was that what somebody else said earlier? As an
On that, are we moving the site walk to the weekend prior to the date? There you go.
That was going to be my next question, because right now you don't have anything on that site walk, so.
I saw you think it, Jen. I was like, Lindo's coming in with and what date is that?
The 14th. You'd be moving it from the 7th to the 14th.
What do we want to site walk on the 14th? Do we have anything else to site walk?
As of now, no.
All right. How do you guys feel about a site walk of Mr. Pazzaglia's property on that date? I think it's a good idea.
Yep.
All in favor, just without taking a motion to do so? One, I've got Dave, I've got Kristen, I've got Rosemary, I've got Phyllis, Don, and going down, Ted, yes, a bunch of, everyone's for it. Is that okay with your client, you think, Mr. Garrity?
I will check. I mean, Mr. Pazzalia leases the property from Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith is the owner, but I think we could probably accommodate you. I'll confirm tomorrow with him and get back to Gary.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
That's all I have.
Anything else, Mr. Gaishel?
Actually, I do have one other item. It's in regards to I wrote a memo to Mr. Mulholland and the East Lyme Zoning Commission and the agency. I'll put this in your packet of materials for next time you can read it, but it's in regard to the multifamily affordable housing application on North Brybrook multifamily development, the application of Paz and Construction LLC. And I had reviewed that plan. Again, most of you are familiar with the site. We had initially denied that application. Mr. Pizzalia made some modifications to that plan and has proposed all his activities outside the 100-foot upland review area. And so I furnished this memo to the zoning commission indicating that there's no regulated activities occurring on the site.
Question. Is this a situation in which we could use the God clause that we have been talking about for 30 minutes during our discussion about the regulations? Is that possible that we do that?
If you can demonstrate that there's going to be a significant impact.
Or that it's in the public's interest?
No. I don't think the public interest, I mean, they'd have to have a petition.
Well, because that was the term prior, so.
So for instance, in the Christian Harvest Fellowship, we went ahead and we decided that needed a public hearing. The regulations go on to say that the full 15-day period that item stays on the agenda, that's so the public can gather that petition, and that way the agency would know how much public interest there is in a particular project. My apologies and failure for not mentioning the rest of that clause. So I think if you look at the regulations and the God clause, if you will, which is really the definition of regulated activity, I'd rather not call it the God clause, it says the agency may rule that any other activity located within such upland review area or any other non-wetland or non-watercourse area is likely to impact or affect wetlands or watercourses is regulated. So you have to just make that, you have to demonstrate that that activity is going to regulate, is going to impact or affect the wetlands.
I think, Mr. Gaishel, though, it's important to note what our prior denial of the application was based upon, and that was that we felt that it was incomplete. So we are still seeking to see that information. Despite it having a modification of units, we're seeking to see more completion of the information. So I believe under those pretenses, we'd like to see, we do in fact have the right to see this application, rather than for it just to move past.
I can bring it before you, but I guess in terms of completeness, and I guess I'm confused a little bit. I know that the applicant went forward and looking at the items and the reasons for denial, and again, this thing's being appealed, so we can only comment so much on it. In regards to this, I mean, I'd have to defer to Mr. Zamarker and say, do we want to bring this back? What's the commission going to need to do to demonstrate that there is an impact? Based on my review and looking at the stormwater quality manual, the 2004 deep stormwater quality manual, I don't see how they're mitigating all their stormwater runoff.
Yeah, well, those were all things that were argued in the record when we felt that based upon the design of us, we didn't feel we were confident in it being operationally comfortable for us, which is why I would make a motion based upon what I hear so far that the current application, Sue, from Mr. Pizzaglia should come before the commission, regardless of it being outside of the 100-foot upland review area. I think we should see that. I don't think it should sneak on by. Does everyone understand what's happening, or is everyone confused? Because I feel like I see confused faces.
No, fine.
It sounds to me like the applicant has come back with a different plan that has reduced the number of units, reduced any potential impact on the wetlands or the 100-foot buffer area.
Careful, you don't know that.
I'm saying I think that. I'm guessing. I don't know that.
Good.
You are correct. I don't know that, but I'm asking for, is that the case?
Well, we don't know because we haven't seen the application. So right now there's a motion on the floor from Gary.
Gary, can you restate that? I was unclear if that was going to be a motion or just a thought of yours.
It's my understanding that Pizzaglia has modified his previously denied application, right? Gary, can you, yes or no?
He took all of the activity outside the 100-foot upland review area.
Right. Utilizing the quote-unquote dislike name God clause, I believe that we should see that application with its changes before our commission. So I'm saying, based upon this conversation that's happened, we should see the modified application of the previously denied because of, no, that's not my motion, sorry.
Okay.
We need to see the Pizzaglia application again.
Well, he has necessarily no particular reason to make applications to the agency. I can bring the plans forward and show them to you. And then until the agency rules that that's a regulated activity, then would he have to then make application?
Right.
I think we need to see those plans before we can ask him, before we can do that, because that's why we were expanding the upland review area.
Yeah, this is exactly the example. Like, I mean, this is.
This is it, right here.
We can't make a finding that he's likely to impact the wetlands or watercourses if we don't
Even see the application.
Yeah.
So that application, the motion is that that new application should come before the commission.
Or I think
Application.
Yes.
It's a zoning application. It's not a wetlands application.
We're saying it needs to be a wetlands application because of the runaround.
So
Sorry,
wasn't,
that's-
what was Mr. Gaishel saying he could show us?
No, we need to
Zoning
determine if he
application.
needs an application. So we would like to see I make a motion to see
Wait,
the
we already have
plan.
a motion. Hold on, sorry.
Okay, sorry. We're not asking for the application because he hasn't applied because it's outside the 100-foot. But we're asking to see the plans to determine if he would need a wetlands application under the God clause of potential impact outside the 100-foot.
They're online on the town website.
They are,
So-
plans
They
are.
have been for over a month. Correct.
So Gary, do you want to amend that motion or leave it as is, or?
I feel that, and Kristen's trying to help me here. Well, I'm not saying, she's trying to say the same thing that I'm saying. We need to determine if that application should come before us prior to it going to zoning. That's what we're saying. Regardless of it being a zoning application, regardless, we feel utilizing our God clause that we need to take a look at it before it goes to zoning.
The zoning commission is hearing that application at public hearing on November 5th.
This is a perfect example that really doesn't matter.
Okay, I'm just letting you know that that's when their public hearing is scheduled for.
I would make a motion that application should not go before zoning, and it should be seen by this commission prior.
Wait, let's stick with our first motion. Hold on. Wait a minute. We still have not, procedurally, I just want to make sure that we complete one thing before we
Based
do another
upon-
thing. Or you can amend your motion, either one. But I just want to make sure procedurally we do this correctly.
Lost, and I don't even know what the original motion is at this point. So many motions have been thrown out there. I'd just like you to start from.
Guys, we gotta get better order. This is a bit too all over the place. We would like to see the Pizzaglia application that was previously denied, that has been modified, right? Insert address of said property. We'd like to see it before our commission. Because now I'm not making a motion, because as we understand, as the laws and the things we are changing, this is a perfect example of the 101 feet rule, right? We have someone changing an application to 101 feet and it's outside, oh, it's on to zoning. Well, no, good job. We're utilizing the likely to have an impact clause, right, Gary, from our regulations, and we would like to take a look at it before anyone starts breaking ground. Because otherwise we're going to be in policing and doing enforcement, which is not very nice.
Can I ask a question to Mr. Gaishel? How far has the modification taken out of the, is it like 101 or is it 105?
Let's look at it. If it's on the website, let's just all look at it right now.
Can you bring that up, Jen?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to, why don't we just look at it?
I think, hold on, I think we should do this at another meeting, not now at 10:40 at night.
Fine.
Just saying, we've gone through our regulations, we've done a lot of stuff, it's not appropriate
Yeah,
think
I
it's,
only mentioned that it's on the website so that all of you know that it's there and you can go look at it at any time, obviously, because it's public. So if you want to look at it, I don't need to send it to anybody.
but it's a perfect example of something we don't even see. It's not even put in front of us because of a snafu in the reg. So my motion stands. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Ms. Chantrell. From the top, Ms. Berger, are you in favor or opposed to my motion?
I'll go along with,
Is that a yes?
yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
All right,
Right,
Kirsten?
sorry, folks, before you vote, can I interject something here? Is this
Yeah.
matter on the agenda?
Hold on, Mr. Zamarka, we're voting, please. Ms. Chantrell?
Yep.
Mr. Schmidt?
No,
No. Ted Koch?
I abstain.
And Mr. Femitzer?
No.
All right, so how many yeses do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4 yeses. That is more than half of the commission. The motion goes through. What were you going to say, Mr. Zamarka?
I was just questioning whether this matter was on the agenda tonight, or whether there was a motion to even add it to the agenda.
No, I understand the workaround, but Mr. Gaishel brought it up as a backdoor added correspondence issue, I believe, or something in his discussion,
Part of my report.
in his report. Does that work for you?
I was just questioning, just wondering.
Does it work, though? Is that okay?
It was brought up, yeah.
Okay. So we're only responding to what we heard, right? But okay. Anyway, moving on. Is there anything else, Mr. Gaishel?
No, that was my last item.
All right. So we're going to see that matter before us, the highly contentious matter, it seems, of Mr. Pizzaglia's application. And take a little look into it using our quote-unquote God clause. Am I right or wrong?
Well, that's what you motioned, yes.
All right. So the next one would, does anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? Yeah?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Ms. Rosemary Ostfeld. All in favor with show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dave. 5, 6 is Ted, and 7 is Don. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.